Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 27th, 2021 City Council and Successor Agency meeting. It's 7 o'clock. It does look like we have a quorum, so if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rary?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. So we do have a quorum. All are in attendance. So if you could join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we will open public comments, and I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda. Items that are listed under informational reports are on the consent calendar. Request for future agenda items, new requests. If you wish to comment on a future agenda item that is specifically listed on the agenda, please wait until that item is called. Please save your comments for any other items that are on the agenda for that part of the meeting when you'll have the opportunity to provide them. I received one written public comment that was submitted to the City Clerk prior to the meeting, and a summary is shown up on the screen on the presentation slide. The City Council has been provided a full copy of the written public comment, and it has been made available on our City Council Agendas webpage. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda. If appropriate, staff will follow up on them. I have 5 hands raised. I will start with Carolina Villaseca, followed by Rod Floor.
Good evening, Council. A couple things. First, I did ask a question at the last meeting about how we are going to ensure that the builders building the Amber Park apartments across the street from Pioneer will stick to the materials on the plans. It has been common practice for builders to do little switcheroos here and there and then plead ignorance and sadness like, oh, I'm so sorry, I switched materials. Well, it's too far along. We can't do anything about it now. The issue with this particular builder is that they've already shown to be a bad faith actor by trying to switch out a large amount of materials to cheapen the build. So they have 2 plans that have already gone through the approval of the Planning Commission. So I really would like an answer on how we are going to ensure that they use the materials from the original plan. Number 2, it was just released that only 35% of Brentwood residents are double vaccinated, and the majority of those, of that 35%, are our senior citizens, which is fantastic. I'm very happy to know that they are protected. My question to each one of the council members is, what are you all doing to get out in the community and encourage people to get vaccinated so that we can return to some sense of normalcy sooner than later? And my third question has to do with Mayor Bryant. He gave the Brentwood Rotary Club a State of the City address on April 12th. So I went to the Brentwood Rotary Facebook page, and there was a nice picture of him there, but there's no video. So I still don't know what the state of our city is. I did actually go out to other city websites, and their mayors actually recorded a State of the City address and posted it on their city website and on their city Facebook page. So maybe this is something Mayor Bryant can do so the rest of us who are not members of the Brentwood Rotary Club could hear what he said. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Rod Floor. Rod, go ahead. Oops.
Hi, thank you, Margaret. I wanted to comment a little bit on last week's Planning Commission meeting, which went totally off the rails. We have two new planning commissioners who clearly don't know what the Planning Commission is for, and in their consideration of a staff recommendation for a denial on a conditional use permit, they not only, buck staff, they went ahead and one of them, David Dolter, allowed as how he didn't even think that place that was zoned as a business park was even a real business park, never mind the zoning. He just wanted to throw out the general plan and zone it how he felt like and make it a school. And he made a motion that wouldn't pass because that wasn't good enough for Commissioner David Sparling, who not only doesn't care about the general plan apparently, but he was not content with just telling staff to come back with a report, recommending it and with a EIR review. He wanted it done in 4 weeks. So he's actually giving staff work to do in the next 4 weeks when staff is pretty busy, I'm pretty sure, with things the City Council has given them to do. And they didn't care. They don't care they're spending the people's money. They don't care what staff has to do. They don't care about anything but themselves. I mean, both gentlemen were very rude. They both bloviated for extended amounts of time, blah, 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 blah. Basically, I'm right, everybody else is wrong, and they really just need to be brought under control. I would recommend that the City Council, at the earliest possible opportunity, call a special meeting because it is urgent, and get staff reallocated to the business at hand. As a taxpayer in this city, I was very offended by what I saw. The city staff works very hard. I myself, I make public requests for information sometimes, and I'm very careful not to do it unless I really feel like I need to because I don't want to burden staff. And there these guys were. They're just ordering them around like they work for him. And actually, David Dolter, he said he didn't want the City Council to have control of it. He wanted to keep control in the Planning Commission. He doesn't like you guys making the decisions for the city, even though, you're the elected ones and he's just the appointee. So, again, I'd like to see the City Council call a special meeting and get the situation under control. If staff needs to go back and review it, that's fine, but they need to be able to do it on their own schedule and not be dictated to by a Planning Commission that clearly is too big for their britches. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Cinziana Todor, followed by Stacy. Cinziana, go ahead. Oops.
Margaret, you unmuted me by mistake.
Oops. Cinziana, you should be unmuted now.
Well, I keep getting the prompt.
Okay. Let's see, my menu keeps jumping around here on me. Cinziana, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oops.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I officially unmuted myself 4 times tonight, but thank you for the opportunity. I hope everyone can hear me. And I want to speak to another example of overpromising and under-delivering from our mayor. As you know, and as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, on 4/12/2021, Brentwood Mayor Joel Ryan delivered State of the City in front of Rotary Club, a very privileged club apparently because the rest of the city was not able to get any insight on what was presented. I have asked at the last City Council meeting, as I mentioned, if there will be any opportunity for all Brentwood residents to hear it, read it, and Mayor Bryan was quick to say in his activity report that the presentation will be made available. Here we are, 2 weeks later, there's no answer, no trace of the presentation promise. I work for a very large company that has hundreds of thousands of employees, but as a small task, as big as posting a presentation on a website or any kind of public space for everybody to see it, it takes about 2 days. That's the service level agreement for this type of task. And while we're at it, can we also have it translated in Spanish? One of our council members is constantly concerned with information accessibility, but failed to request this item to be translated. At least he didn't do it in public. So he's afraid of his boss for some reason, or what's the deal here? Please stop keeping the public ignorant. Not everybody is part of any church, any privileged club, or any all-boys club, as the vast majority of the city calls all the people who have access to very restricted information, apparently. And I would like to echo Rod's comment on Planning Commission meeting. They pretty much forgot what their job is, especially Mr. Dalton and Sparling. Since you appointed them, please remind them why they are there and collaborate with other departments and groups around the city and stop wasting taxpayers' money on staff hours that are completely unnecessary. Thank you.
The next speaker is Stacy, followed by Allison Lee. Stacy, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The reason that I'm wanting to address this issue is this came out of a recent situation with the Brentwood Pony League. And although there was a misunderstanding in the direction of what was required for the children to participate in or to resume play for baseball, it created this opportunity where I went to our website to see what's going on and look at the policy. And in doing so, I noticed that the COVID-19 resource page was last updated on June 4th, 2020. Now, we've come a long way since then. We have a lot more information available to us. We've had time to review the statistics of survivability. But the only thing that seems to get broadcast 24/7 everywhere you turn is case numbers going up. Okay, it's contagious. All right? The death numbers have gone down. And the survivability, because there were so much, everybody was getting COVID, or there was this fear-mongering, quite frankly, going on to scare everybody to death. And the reality is that the survivability is, what is my figure? I put it in the thing, 94.6% to 99.997%. But you cannot find that kind of information anywhere, not even on our county's health department page that we link to as the city of Brentwood. So people are not getting other information or a different narrative that can let them know that there are therapies out there, that you can survive this, and what the hell with the vaccination for something that is survivable? That doesn't make any sense, especially when it's experimental. It's not even approved as a vaccine by the FDA. It is under an emergency use authorization, which means it can't be mandated, that you have to get it, whether at the schools or at your employment, but none of that is being sent out into the public. are you guys going to update our page and possibly post the Children's Health Defense Fund information that I sent to you as something that people could link to so they have equal information that they could discern for themselves what the truth is?
The final speaker that I have with their hands raised is, the final speaker I have with the hand raised is Allison Lee.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Allison here. Thank you for your time. About 2 weeks ago, there was a transient male that started camping at the intersection of Balfour and Brentwood Boulevard, blocking the sidewalk. A couple days after that, there was a green tent with another transient male that was put up in the vacant lot at Balfour and Brentwood Boulevard. I called Brentwood Police Department a few times to figure out, what was being done with the issue, and I was told that it was not a crime to be homeless, which I am aware of. However, I'm curious about why they weren't enforcing any of the penal codes, Penal Code 647C, Penal Code 370, and now Penal Code 369I. I was also directed by the police dispatch to contact City Council regarding the issue, so what I would like to know is what's being done or what the plan is moving forward. My main concern is how close they are to the sidewalk. I know Brentwood does have a lot of homeless encampments, and it is a problem, but my main concern about this one is the closeness to the sidewalks and how many more tents are we going to allow before the issues are being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see one additional hand raised, and it's Stephen Bordy, and I wasn't sure if he was wanting to speak on the proclamation. Mr. Bordy, did you want to speak regarding?
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome. Did you want to speak on the proclamation? That's next on the agenda, or did you have a public comment?
I'll speak whenever you want me to.
Okay, sir. I think that's coming up next.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bordy. That is next on the agenda, and as soon as I read the proclamation, I will call on you for speaking. But before we do that, Chief, could we get a little update on the homeless issue? I know this is very concerning. I've been handling calls and face-to-face meetings or nearly face-to-face meetings, public appropriate distancing in the community all well for the last month. If we could get just a quick update on some of these concerns, Chief Hansen, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been receiving calls lately too, and it is very frustrating. There has been some case law that's come out of the Ninth Circuit Court, Boise versus Martin case, that has rightly so said that homeless is not a crime and that people have a right to rest, meaning that they have a right to, if they want, pitch a tent. Like that last caller said, we do have a gentleman that pitched a tent on Brentwood Boulevard at Balfour. They can't block the sidewalk, so our officers went out there and made sure that he was not blocking the sidewalk, but he was there on the grass area. He may have. I'm not going to say he wasn't blocking the sidewalk, but our officers went out there. We tried to get the gentleman help, and he refused help. So we are our hands are tied when it comes to this. The Governor Newsom during COVID had limited us, and our county limited us on contacting our homeless. So they didn't want us out contacting them. We have been able to work with some of our homeless. Currently, we have 31 homeless. I was out there 3 weeks ago handing some information out to try to get them to a local vaccination center that we hosted 2 weeks ago here in Brentwood at Sand Creek by the old Los Padones College. So I did talk to 12 of our homeless, and they're very aware of the law that's in place right now and the limits that are placed on us in enforcing that. I know some of our neighboring cities are also dealing with this issue right now. It is very frustrating. We will continue to reach out to our homeless and try to get them help that is offered through our county resources. I have to be honest with you. We have not been successful. Our homeless folks are addicted to drugs, and I can tell you that for certainty. And right now, we will continue. There are some that just get so out of control, and it's such a public safety issue that our officers are going out there. They are tagging them, and we are evicting them from that spot. But there are laws in place, and we have to be very careful. I don't want to be violating anyone's rights, and they are homeless, so I'm very sensitive to that, that they're out in our elements right now. But I also need to be sensitive that I have 65,000 residents that I need to keep safe in our city. So it's a balance, Mr. Mayor and Council, and it's tough. I'll tell you, a lot of my work week is dedicated to the homeless issue in Brentwood right now, and I know it's frustrating for everyone, and I'm sorry I don't have the answers for you, Mayor and Council. I just don't. I can let you know, I can assure you that we are trying everything, and I'm all ears. If somebody has a model out there that's working, that we can get our homeless out there. But right now, the services are offered through the county. We do work with the county, and if any of them want help, we will get it to them. I can assure you that we do not have families that are homeless out in our streets. We don't have children that are homeless out on our streets. And to my knowledge, as of last week, we don't have veterans out there that are homeless. So, Mayor, I know this is not something that is a real positive story. I'm sorry, I don't have a positive story. I'm just as frustrated as everyone else. But I have to abide by the law, and I cannot be violating people's constitutional rights, and that's what it is.
Thank you, Chief. I also want to let the community know that our police department is under absolute orders that if there is criminal activity going on, that they are being both proactive and in response to call-in calls for service. If there's criminal activity going on, they're going to act on that. And so they're not just observing that we're doing everything that we can legally do right now. And I know it's frustrating for everyone. And as soon as we're able to do differently and more, we will absolutely continue to do that to make Brentwood the kind of community and keep it the kind of place that we all want to live and raise our families.
And Mr. Mayor, one last thing to address the callers. The 602 trespassing sections, we have met over the years with our city attorney and have thrown those around. Again, we have to be very careful not to violate the Martin v. Boise case, and to go back to your crime, we will take action on people committing crimes. It is, again, very frustrating because a lot of cases are not getting filed. I'm not going to say it's common, but it has happened where we have arrested 3 of our folks in one day, and they've been returned back to the city. So it's a frustrating situation all the way around. We will stay on top of it. And again, I'm all ears. If somebody has the answer, we will work hard to help our city work with the situation.
Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate everything that you and your officers are doing. So at this time, we will move into presentations and proclamation. May 2021 as Older Americans Month, and I'm going to read the proclamation, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Steve Bordy, who is from the Senior Club, to address the council as well. Whereas Brentwood includes a growing number of older Americans who have built resilience and strength over their lives through successes and difficulties. And whereas Brentwood benefits when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are included and encouraged to share their successes and stories of resilience. And whereas Brentwood recognizes our need to nurture ourselves, reinforce our strength, and continue to thrive in times of both joy and difficulty. And whereas Brentwood can foster communities of strength by creating opportunities to share stories, and learn from each other, engaging older adults through education, recreation, and service, and encouraging people of all ages to celebrate connections and resilience. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize May 2021 as Older Americans Month and encourages every resident to recognize older adults and the people who support them as essential contributors to the strength of our community. Dated this 27th day of April 2021. And at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Steve Bordy if he could address the council.
Steve Bordy here, president of the Brentwood Senior Citizens Club. The senior community of Brentwood comprises a significant portion of the city's population. Brentwood is requesting the mayor and city council issue a proclamation declaring that annually, every month of May be declared as Older Americans Month. This is a national event sponsored by the Administration for Community Living that was established in 1916 for 2021. Such a proclamation would not only showcase the city of Brentwood's commitment to its senior population, but would also provide emphasis in support of the City Council's long-term goal and objective of providing support and services to its growing senior demographic. I would also be remiss at this time if I didn't also mention the continued support of the services provided by the City Parks and Recreation Department, led by Bruce Mulder, Chris Barrow, Olivia Alvarez, and Amanda Cheney, along with the rest of their support staff. Without them, the Brentwood Senior Citizens Club would be hard-pressed to function on behalf of the seniors. Thank you for acknowledging and supporting our seniors, an important segment of our unique and vibrant community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bordy. At this time, we will move into informational reports from council members, committee staffs, and liaison. If we could start with Councilmember Mendoza.
Sure. Hello. Busy couple weeks. First off, we had an Innovation Center update that I attended. I recommend that everyone go on to the website. You can watch the video there. We really need your input on what you like and you don't like about the Innovation Center. Had a couple of calls, actually 3 calls regarding SB9, 2 with Livable Cities and 1 with Cali. If anyone's interested in learning more about SB9 and the impact on our housing, that would be fantastic. Give me a call and I can get you the information. Catalyst is the one for residents, the group that is working on that. I met with local officials, 5 other local officials from the region, trying to figure out how we can work regionally on things that impact all of us. It seems that things sometimes get lost because we don't talk and everything's really formal, so trying to kind of do something informal. Had attended a virtual convening driving economic recovery and mobility with the guest speaker being former Mayor Tubbs from Stockton. That was really interesting regarding what he did in his city, and crime went down, jobs went up. So it was a really good call. Learned a lot there. Attended a couple of meetings on oil and gas drilling. The report should be released this month. I haven't seen anything yet. As soon as it is, I'll be sharing it on social media, and that's the environmental impact report. Attended a meeting, actually, that was for Martinez, Anti-Racism and Discrimination, Pro-Inclusion and Equity Commission. It's a resident commission that they have, wanted to learn some best practices on how they're dealing with that. There's some interesting information, and we'll see what we can do in our city to make people feel more included. Also volunteered at another vaccination clinic at GNS Farms. We vaccinated 106 people. And I am one of those people that reports all of the information. So far, I think a caller said we have people who are fully vaccinated, 35.4%, partially vaccinated, 50.7%. We actually are the 21st out of 31 cities in Contra Costa with vaccination rates. We are not doing well. And I do hear people saying we want to get back to normal. Well, getting back to normal means that we get vaccinated. And like the caller said before, I hope that everyone on the council is looking forward to their vaccination if they haven't gotten it yet, and is actually actively doing something to get our residents vaccinated, because until then, we're not going to get back to normal. I also hope that everyone in the city and the council is following all the guidelines by the county and wearing a mask when they're out, if they have not been vaccinated, or even if they have been vaccinated in large groups, and making sure that everyone's following the rules around them. That's what I would expect from my fellow council members. And then lastly, I attended a Contra Costa Racial Justice Coalition meeting regarding AB 988, which people would like to name the Miles Hall bill. I am completely in support of this bill. It's regarding mental health. We received an email from our chief because before we move forward, I wanted to make sure that it was something that he felt would help our city, and he saw no problem with it. Anything we can do to help people who are suffering from mental illness, and anything we can do to help the police department manage those cases would be great. So I will be talking about that a little bit later. But that is what I worked on this week, at least 2 weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I'll try to make it brief. I have a lot too. Phone meeting with Andy Lee, who is the Contra Costa Community College District Governing Board President. We discussed engagement and outreach to our Asian American community members in Brentwood. Also discussed the new LMC campus. He's very excited about that, as am I. League Housing Community and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting. Let's see, took a tour of the Concord Youth Center with the Youth Center Ad Hoc Committee to get an idea of one of the local models that we could consider. Scheduled a few phone meetings with residents who wanted to provide some feedback on, discussing the budget, the current feasibility study, feedback on the tech center, alternate site locations, different models to consider, different programs to consider, and other city youth centers that we should be taking a look at. Livable Cities and California Alliance of Local Electeds meetings, the League Council and Mayors Roundtable, which was a roundtable discussion about disaster preparedness and recovery. A Zoom meeting, this was one of my favorites actually, a Zoom meeting with an 8th grader named Brigitta for a school project. She's doing interviews of community members on a very controversial topic, and it's for her Proteus project. And I wanted to encourage any parents out there that if you have the ability to engage with your council members, I'm pretty sure all of us on council would love the chance to work with students and help them with their projects and be a sounding board and an interviewee and all. I just love the idea of working with our students. So please consider that, suggest it to your teachers. All of us would be very happy to come and speak on a Zoom or whatever. Guessing that's right. Let's see, Innovation Center Town Hall, League of Cities legislative meeting. This was all of the policy committee groups that got together to give updates for public safety, environmental, housing, all of that. There was a discussion about AB 988, the Mental Health Mobile Crisis Support Team. The League is going to be providing a letter of support template. Once they do that, I feel pretty strongly that we should be adding our name to that and submitting that. Again, Chief Hansen, I interacted with him as well on this, and I would agree that he was very open-minded about it and was really just all about what is the best way to promote safety for our citizens when they are in crisis. Attended the Institute for Local Government webinar, Leading Local Addressing Hate Crimes. Not really informational, but I attended the communal market. I hope those continue. That was really great. I volunteered at the county walk-up vaccination clinic in Antioch. And at that clinic, I didn't find out the exact total numbers, but on Sunday they did over 400 vaccinations. It was inspiring. People were so thrilled and grateful to start getting some normalcy. And then Monday attended briefly, because I had to work, the city of Brentwood's the Resource and Health and Safety Circus Drive-Through Resource Fair at the Brentwood Senior Center. And I have to give a huge shout out to Parks and Rec, the people that Mr. Bordy mentioned, and also to the East County Senior Coalition members who worked so hard to get the activity kits, the emergency preparedness kits, the food bags, all the goodies put together, and the resources so that all these seniors that came through could drive through safely and get their bags of resource information and go home. And there was a lot of people really thrilled about taking care of that. And I think that serves as a good model for other cities. It's going to be happening in Pittsburgh. Really fantastic event. I was so thrilled to be there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rary.
Yes, thank you. Since the last time we met, I also attended the Innovation Center at Brentwood Virtual Town Hall. the League of California Cities, a conversation with the U.S. Department of Treasury on implementation of the American Rescue Plan. I also received a League of California City presidential appointment to the Community Service Policy Committee and also attended one of those meetings. Policy committees get together. There's, I believe, I think there's 6, maybe 8 policy committees. Anyway, we get together and discuss the different policies that are coming up in front of the legislature. What was on our agenda that day was AB 1071 Rodriguez, Office of Emergency Services, tabletop exercises. This measure would require the Office of Emergency Services to conduct tabletop exercises of California's catastrophic response plans on a biennial basis with representatives of the whole community and lifeline operators, as well as AB 536, also Rodriguez, Office of Emergency Services, Mutual Aid Gap Analysis. And this would require the Office of Cal OES to prepare a gap analysis of the state's mutual aid system. This gap analysis must be based on the firefighting, law enforcement, emergency medical services, mass care, shelter, and hospital surge capacity required to respond to 2 simultaneous major disasters occurring in California. And I think we can all say that in looking at our area, they will find that our gap analysis is huge because we are missing several stations here that we should have at this point for our firefighters and to staff them. I also attended the John Marsh Historic Trust, and like I did at the last meeting, if I happen to go off camera, it's because I am still recovering from surgery. I may need to get up and walk a little bit. I will be in earshot of the meeting at all times, and will respond when need be. So that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's good to see you, at least feeling some better, with us tonight. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes, I also participated in the Innovational Center update. Was able to attend that. I thought they did a really good job. I also participated in the ad hoc ad hoc meeting that we had. We toured the CYC. I also want to thank Matt, who's the director there at CYC, for hosting us. A very good meeting to give us an opportunity to see some of the possibilities that we could do here in Brentwood. I also wanted to thank actually Councilmember Meyer for attending this weekend. I heard it was very successful, and I also want to give a shout out and a thank you to the Parks and Recs Department. I do know a lot of people that attended that, and it was really, really well done, put together. So I just want to thank everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, he attended the East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy Board, as well as numerous meetings with residents regarding homeless issues and several businesses, both our current business owners and a few that are looking to come into town as well. And I also attended the communal artisan event downtown on Saturday, along with the farmers market. And it's really nice to see the crowds coming back downtown, supporting our local businesses and our local artists and business owners. So at this time, that's all I have to report. So we'll move into the consent calendar. And if I could get a motion to adopt the consent calendar or any items that you would like to pull from the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent calendar as is.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza? Councilmember Mendoza? Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay. We'll move on to business items. Item D1, the consideration of a resolution regarding the East Contra Costa County Glideways Dynamic Personal Micro Transit Project. And we'll turn it to our city manager, Tim.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have an exciting presentation for you tonight. This is the future, I think, of transportation, at least has the potential to be so. So we have a presentation tonight from Habib Shamskow. He's the president of Advanced Mobility Group, and in partnership with the cities of Pittsburgh, Antioch, Brentwood, and Oakley, put together a feasibility study on the Glideways project that is the dynamic personal microtransit. And these are the autonomous vehicles that would connect this East County and provide some commuter options and other options for our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Habib, and then once he's finished with his presentation, open it up for questions of Habib or myself, and look for your support on the resolution of support that's attached to your staff report. Habib?
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council Member. Again, my name is Habib Shamskow. I'm the president of the Advanced Mobility Group. Before I get started, for those of you that haven't seen this new concept in microtransit, I'd like to see you a few pictures. This is how the pod it look like. It's a very small unit of about 6 foot tall altogether and require only 7 foot footprints to operate. This is how the interior of the unit look like, and there are about 4 people can easily sit on it on the opposite side of each other. So the door actually on the picture on the left is open at the middle, so a 7 or 7.5 foot tall person can get in, and then the sit down and the door is closed. Up to a family of 4 people that easily can ride with this unit. The picture below show the boarding zone, and this can be at grade or elevated. The next picture, it shows again the boarding zone. It is on demand with no crowding. It's easily accessible. It operates like the tram. It just comes in series, and you have time to sit on it, and the door closes automatically, and you have a safe ride moving forward. It's very efficient in cleaning and sanitization, and vehicle now is equipped with the self-clean latest technology for the COVID and the post-COVID type of the operation. So this is the pictures that you see on this screen is at the Gomentum station where the proof of concept is taking place, and the proof of concept is about to be completed by the next few weeks, and we would be happy to take you for the ride at the Gomentum station by late spring or early summer. This project, the proof of concept, is moving ahead of the schedule, in fact. So let me tell you about the feasibility study that the 4 cities in East County, city of the Pittsburgh, Antioch, Brentwood, and Oakley, they joined together to do this quick feasibility study because the reason for the speedy, quick feasibility study because of the private financing opportunity that it is at hand. All the tasks that you see in this chart, which is a task flow diagram, have been completed, and you do have a draft of the feasibility study, the final version, and in your possession. I want to thank you all the staff that they accommodated us with the resources that we could conduct this feasibility study very quickly. So let me go briefly through what we really accomplished. These are the goals and objectives that we have established early on with all the city manager. Number 1, it will provide the transit accessibility by building a network of the dynamic personal microtransit system at no cost to the city. It will provide transit accessibility to assure economic development and attract employers. I must say that it is as much as is economic development project, it is the transportation project. The idea is to create a high-paying job in the East County and attract employers. And finally, the final goal is conduct a feasibility in a design, build, for finance, operate, and maintain environment to attract potential public funding and take advantage of the marketplace in private financing. So early on, we decided that we wanted to do P3 type of the project, public-private partnership with the design, build, finance, operate, and maintain technique. So in the second workshop that we conducted in late January, we all agreed on the following routing plan. So routing plan that you see in here is what we have worked with your staff, with the city staff to accomplish, and that's the full network. In Brentwood, the dashed line that you see is over there is the Road to Future Park and Ride, as well as your proposed innovation zone in Brentwood. Yeah. So this is the overlay of the transportation asset in the East County, which includes Tri-Delta Transit BART, as well as the Highway 4. This system is going to complement existing bus route and is going to actually increase the productivity of bus route because it's going to the people are going to have the access through this system for the first mile, last mile, for the taking the fixed route bus of the Tri-Delta Transit. So this picture, it shows basically over 51 zone that you can get the ride with this, and is all coincide with where the bus station is and where the major BART station is, and also goes through the business center. As I said again, the glideways complement existing transit and other active transportation modes in the East County. Now, we didn't know whether we have a real project or not until we did the full macro-level demand analysis and projected ridership for the system. So what we did, we actually used the Tri-Delta Transit model for projecting the demand in here. This model and the methodology has been validated by Contra Costa County Transportation Authority Planning Department, and our potential demand, it ended up to be about 13 million rides per year. So we apply a lot of conservative factor, and we assume a 7 million number for annual ridership for the entire network in the East County. And that's how we realized that this can be really a game changer, and we have a real project. So to put it in perspective, the Tri-Delta Transit carried 2.7 million passengers per year. That is pre-COVID. Right now is about half of that roughly. The BART, E-BART annual ridership, the 2019 statistic is 2.2 million. SR4 corridor carry 52 million trips per year, and with this 7 million passenger per year for the glide-based micro transit, we can really have the impact on the SR4 corridor as a congestion relief type of the project as well. So this picture, it shows the amount of emission reduction of the micro transit versus the BRT at 6 times that, as well as the 15 times by the passenger cars. So this is 100% electric cars, energy efficient, and it must attract the Bay Area Air Quality Management District funding as well. So here is the summary of all the benefits that are documented in feasibility study, support economic development and create jobs. And it is congestion relief with the deployment of the first micro transit network in the Bay Area, and increase access for the underserved community. Now, a few words about the financial plan. As I said, we are trying to do this project in the P3 type of the environment, is a public-private financing. We early on the project, simultaneously with that feasibility study, we have evaluated all the potential public funding, and this is the list in here. I'm not going to go through one by one. We do have a comprehensive funding plan for the public funding. The most important one is the inclusion into the regional transportation plan, which Contra Costa Transportation Authority is in the full support of that. This is all reflected in our feasibility study if you want to look at the detail of this. Now, the business case model, as I said, is a public funding plus the private financing, and we're going to do this in the design, build, finance, operate, and maintain environment. So in final conclusion, we have a real project now and the transportation solution for East Contra Costa County. So we believe that the good feasibility study, as the way that we conducted in an expedited manner within only 4 months, and the consensus of the community, that means the City Council approval of this plan and build as integral part of the transit plan in the East Contra Costa County for the near-term, mid-term, and long-term with the appropriate publicity. It will attract new funding source, and we can easily sell this to the funding source both in the public and the private. We have been in discussion with the private financing, and they are highly interested in this project to finance it. So final conclusion, we have real project and the transportation solution for your neighborhood. With that, if there is any questions, I would be happy to answer that. Yeah.
If there are any questions of staff, if you could raise your hand. Yes, Councilperson Rary.
I just had a couple questions. I know that it showed that you had steam disinfecting, UV drying, detailing station, and then I did see that on this that you also said vehicles can self-clean. Is that something that needs to be added into it now, or is it something that's always been there? And especially in this day and age when people are concerned about COVID and getting into a vehicle right after somebody had gotten out of it, how long does it take for that to clean?
That's a good question. The issue of the self-clean, it comes up not just because simply of the COVID situation that we are in. This vehicle need to be cleaned anyhow at the end of the night or whatever interval that is required to be cleaned. And now the glide bays are using the latest technology for the self-clean rather than to be cleaned manually by the people as much or so. These are going to be semi-automated self-clean. And in fact, right now that we are actually heading to get out of the COVID situation, if you look at the unit on the top left, at the middle, you could have actually plexiglass to protect each party on each side if it desire. But it may not be necessary in the near future, but that's also another option. Yeah.
Okay. And in your operational scenario 3 in the feasibility study, that the technical problem in the vehicle, in the case of the vehicle, is unable to continue to its destination and has to wait for a tow, what happens to the passenger? Is another vehicle dispatched to the site to pick up the passenger, or do they hitch a ride with the utility truck, tow truck?
Yeah, the entire operation, not for the entire county, segment by segment, is going to be managed by fleet management software and management center for this. So they are not going to be left alone over there. There's constantly being watched and monitored. any detection of any incident, the response plan will automatically will respond to the situation at hand. And there are many, many different scenarios for the minor incident, major incident, and other incident will be considered, and how to rectify the situation at hand immediately and move the vehicle out of the commission and continue with their operation. So the safety and operation plan is at work, and that's something that is going to be developed and tested through the course of the project as we move along.
Well, what happens to the passenger? I mean, if it's to the point where it has to remove itself from the track into that safety lane, what happens to the passenger? Are they waiting for somebody to come and pick them up, or will another vehicle be dispatched to pick them up?
So the fleet management software detects any kind of the incident like that, and the dispatch would be within the minutes of any kind of the ride floating around in the along the route in different segments. Perhaps for 5 different segments, we're going to have the 5 different dispatcher on a car that could move to the scene as quickly as possible. And also the fleet management software are in constant communication with the EMS and other emergency service provider for any kind of the accident or incident here.
Okay, and I don't know if you can answer this question for me or if staff needs to, but looking at the proposed routes, it appears some of it is proposed to utilize the abandoned Makoko line. And I know back when EBART was a concept, just a concept, the intent was to use the Makoko line right-of-way, but that deal fell through when the Union Pacific declined to sell its right-of-way. So is this something that you're considering again, is using the Makoko line? Or is it just looks like it's coming down at that angle there off of Sand Creek and down through the Makoko line to the BART, to the BART Park and Ride.
So before I ask City Manager to respond, the network that you see in here at the very, very preliminary level and subject to go through the several round in the conceptual design, preliminary design, and final design before we call it a final network. The route that we have selected in here was for the purpose of the feasibility study and the demand analysis mostly, rather than call it at any level of the close to something to be final. So you will have a great input into this, not only you, but the community is going to have the input into this, and when we go through the engagement with your citizens for the proposed route during the different stages of the project.
Okay, so there's still time for the public to voice where these things should go, and
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza.
Hi, just a quick thing for staff. I think some of these slides weren't in our packet, so if we can make sure when we do like the recap of the meeting, can we include all the slides? That would be great. What is the price per ridership index versus BART? Is it higher or lower, and by what percentage?
That's a good question. In fact, I want to bring you the great news that the Tri-Delta Transit, we presented to their board, and they adopted this project in the last board meeting with the resolution of the support, and we had a great meeting with the executive director. She agreed to be the operator of this. And the estimated ride for this is around $2 to $2.20 at this time, only for the purpose of the this feasibility study and doing financial plan. But we envision that as
hi, okay, sorry, I need to talk into it. So again, this is Derek Cole, City Attorney. The City Council met in closed session to discuss the appointment of an interim city manager.
Is anyone hearing what I'm hearing?
Yes.
What was that?
That was the Oakley City Council meeting that's going on right now.
Habib, I know you're on mute, but real quick, I know it's $2.20, but what $2.20 doesn't tell me versus what. That's why I was asking more of an index, because I think that would help me understand a little bit more higher, lower. So $2.20 versus what? Oh.
I'm so sorry about that. That is versus the $2.20 versus a similar ride of the $7 to $8 by the Uber or Lyft or so. But regardless of that, we are still expecting to be this to be subsidized. Yeah.
Well, Uber and Lyft aren't the competition, right? Your competition is either eBart or Tri-Delta. So if we could get an index versus those forms of ridership, that would be great. Is it going to be lower or higher than an equivalent rate for those? That would be great. And
so
then,
the eBart, let me comment on that one. This is for a complete trip. So when you ride this, you pay for the entire ride with this, as well as if you use the Tri-Delta Transit after that, or the eBart for a complete trip all the way to San Francisco. Yeah.
So you're saying I could take it from Brentwood all the way to this end to Pittsburgh, and that's $2.20 is what you're estimating right now?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. And then my other question was around the ridership. Tri-Delta has 2.7 riders. eBart has 2.2 riders. You're forecasting 7 million riders. I have some background noise. I don't know what that is. But my question is, how are we getting to 7 million riders? Because how many riders ride from, what do you estimate riding from Brentwood and getting off in Pittsburgh? Because usually people go farther than Pittsburgh. They go to Walnut Creek, Oakland, San Francisco. So how are you over-indexing on ridership when it comes to that? I mean, I think this is all a great idea. These are not questions that say I'm poo-pooing the idea. I just want to understand.
Yeah, we do have a chapter on demand analysis in our feasibility study report that is just, it is kind of the complete at this time. But again, we are going to do the full demand analysis when we take the project to the next level. Yep.
Okay, and we'll all get copies of those feasibility studies when they're complete?
It is, and you do have the full feasibility study in your possession.
Sorry, I must have missed that. I'll look at that again. Okay, and is there any vision of this, one of our biggest traffic issues is Vasco. Would there ever be any vision, and I don't know any possibility of this just because of land use, but going down Vasco, which I think would be in huge demand if you could take it from Brentwood to Livermore somewhere down to Pleasanton.
It's delay. If you're listening online, you're going to be about 20 to 30 seconds behind the meeting. So if you're waiting to speak, please listen on the phone, which is in real time.
Okay, turning it off. Is that better? How come we have Oakley's meeting on our computer? So,
Habib, I don't know if you have someone listening to something on your end. Can you have them?
It's not on my end. I check in a second. Yeah.
Yeah, they're on Oakley's council agenda for presenting tonight as well. So maybe there's some.
I think something's going on over on their end.
From our Laurel Elementary is a bad idea. It's like putting a blindfold on our kids' eyes.
Habib, can you mute, please? Okay, what do you guys want to do about this? Because this doesn't seem good.
Go ahead and ask any additional questions, and I'll try to field those if they're pressing.
Okay, that's all the questions that I had. The Vasco one was the last one, if that's being looked into at all.
Yeah, Vasco could be a future extension. So they've started with the initial track system to connect the 4 cities, and Vasco could be a future phasing as this project.
Highway 239 to Tracy.
Sure.
That would be good too. Okay, those were all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I have to make a comment to start. This is so much reminding me of Disneyland Tomorrowland. It's crazy. Anyone else feeling like that? Okay, so I do have a few questions, different aspects of this. One of them is a confirmation of a statistic that was in the report, and it mentioned that only 6% of East County residents commute through public transit. Is that accurate? Tim, do you know, or am I directing comment?
No, my dear, that is accurate. I think that the problem with the voice has gone. So that's quite accurate. The number nationwide it was about the 7%, and in last two years it did go down to the 6.8%.
Well, that was part of the question. Is this because of COVID or is that pre-COVID?
No, pre-COVID, we in the entire Contra Costa County, we were doing the lower than national average of 7%. It is well documented, is around the 6%, 5.8% roughly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Has Brentwood already contributed the $10,000? Has that been previously budgeted at the other cities? That these three are already on board?
Yeah, all four cities contributed to this study, and matched by the 50% additional budget by the glide-based system, the private sector, including our own contribution to this project.
Great. Where are the cars manufactured?
Here in USA.
What state?
It's going to be in California. They haven't selected the city yet. We are encouraging the glide-based management to East County. Yes.
And okay. I understand that they meet ADA compliance expectations. We know that the need for disability and senior transportation is absolutely huge, and I can see that there is space, like when you open up the doors for a wheelchair or a walker or a stroller for that matter to get through. Is there some kind of stability for when the cars start to move? And is there a way for we have a lot of senior communities within Brentwood. I'm just like, could there be a stop at the Brentwood Senior Center, for example? I'm looking at that angle.
Yeah, I would like to postpone this question to when you take a ride with it by the end of the next month and early June or so, because I cannot say something with the high level of confidence until I ride with it myself too. I haven't ride with it yet.
Okay, good point. In the study, there was a conceptual route alignment through key stakeholders, and I was curious who those were, the key stakeholders.
So right now, the key stakeholder is the four cities, Contra Costa County, CCTA, as well as the Tri-Delta Transit. We have an expanded stakeholder group that we're going to add later on in the project. That would be the MTC, Caltrans, the commuter rail, as well as the Bay Area Air District.
Okay. And the last one, I understand that Concord is a little bit ahead in this process. I'm curious if there are any fully implemented programs inside California or outside for that matter.
No, Concord actually is not ahead. They don't have any plan for the microtransit. In Concord, at the Momentum Station, we are doing the proof of concept. That is where it's taking place in the enclosed environment, which we will going to invite you to come and visit. Your second part of the question, is Contra Costa County perhaps is going to be the first to implement this. It is in competition with the South San Francisco and City of San Jose. So hopefully, because we have all the political support that we have in here, that we can implement it much faster, and as well as the support of the CCTA.
So just saying the political support would be even stronger if the manufacturing took place here.
Yeah, we will pitch for that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, some of the questions I had already were asked, which is great. I guess I just have one more question. In regards to safety issues, right? If something violent was to happen in this car, I was just thinking, four people going in there, nobody knows each other, and there's an issue, right? How is that handled, I guess? What occurs? Obviously, hopefully there's cameras in there, but what's the emergency response to that when it comes to safety for people? I know that, the question was somewhat asked by Councilmember Rary, but I'm just wondering, a violent situation happens in one of these vehicles.
Yeah, you do have the emergency button in your vehicle that you can press anytime, and the second part of your question is that this system, it has to go through a lot of the safety procedure and validation by number of the different entities, including NHTSA, including the CPUC, and including the FDA. We are not there yet. So by the time that we're going to collect the first ride and the first passenger, we have to have all those certifications that is required to be able to safely operate this.
Thank you.
Consider it like a tram that you go to this ski area, and if there is any emergency or anything, and considering like the people mover in the airport, or so that there is nobody's at front of the people mover and moving automatically. Those systems also, they have gone through a number of different safety tests and regulation in order to get approved to be implemented.
Yeah, I guess my thing is, though, right, it's really personal, right? You're saying there's only 4 people in the vehicle, and, I'm just thinking there could be a young person in there, some older people in there, and things could happen, right? So
right.
It's when it's a larger vehicle, there's more people. We're hoping that there's less things to happen just because there's more witnesses, there's more, people hoping to stop it. My concern is, 3 older people, 1 young person in there, and something happens. How is that? But like you said, I know this is the early stages, so there's a lot these are discussions that are going to happen, and obviously bring hopefully to the public, but also that you guys will be working on. So, yeah, those are a little bit of concerns because it's very personal, right? It's like, man, it's us 4, we're all riding together kind of a thing. Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions.
Okay.
One last question.
Sure, yeah.
If I'm looking at the report, I'm not finding the data inputs to get to that 7 million ridership. I see the cities, but I don't know how we got to the forecast for each city. So I don't need it now, but if we could just understand how we're getting
we will be happy to send it to you, all of our detailed analysis related to that. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to know how we're going to get from 2.7 plus 2.2, which is 4.9, to 7 million for the local public transit. So that's it.
7 million is the new ride for this system. It's definitely going to have an impact on the bus fixed route transit numbers. It will increase the productivity of that, and it will also increase the productivity of the BART. All the number is going to come out of the use of the personal car.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that's why it is the congestion relief project.
Okay. Yeah, just the backup would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have one question. This is called the Personal Microtransit Project. Is the intent that in directing some of my comments, absorbing some of the others councilperson's comments, they all touched a bit on it. Is it possible to be the only rider in there? Is there a way, if you feel uncomfortable, or what does the system look like?
Yes, that is actually a very good question. You could just exactly like a ski resort, that sometimes that you like to sit down alone on that little cart that goes up. You could sit down by yourself, and the next one it comes immediately after that. This is they are floating very fast, one after another. Yes, you can sit alone without having anybody else in there. The next guy can wait for the next one to come in. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, at this time, then, we will open public comments on this item. Margaret?
Oops. I received 0 written public comments on this item prior to the meeting. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I have 4 hands raised. I will start with Rod Floor, who will be followed by Mark Seeger. Mr. Floor, go ahead.
Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, I have a couple of concerns with this. The first concern is that this is another track-based transit. So the problem with track-based transit is that, you buy the right-of-way, you build the track, and then you can't really move it very easily. So if the route changes, you're kind of stuck with it. You can extend it, but you can't move it. And we have the same problem with the BART and the Caltrans and all the others, the Caltrain, all the other stuff like that. Buses in general are my preferred way of doing transit because a bus uses a public street, and the route changes, the bus just goes to a different route. The second issue that I have with it is I believe that by 2030, when this thing is online, it will be obsolete. There are multiple companies right now working on autonomous taxis that will just take you wherever you want to go. And as a matter of fact, even there's a company called Zoox. It's spelled like zoo with an X on the end. You can just go to Zoox.com and you look at their little car. It's basically this thing. The only difference is it goes anywhere on the public roadways. You don't have to build a track for it. So I think that this is very interesting. I like the the clean energy aspect of it. I like transit. I like the fact that people don't have to own their own cars. They can get in this thing and move around. But I find it very limiting, and I think that at the end of the day, by the time we get it built, it's going to be a relic. I don't think anybody's going to want to use it because they can just hop in a robo-taxi, for want of a better word, and just go where they want to go. And even if you look at Zoox.com, which I'm not promoting it or anything, it's just something I'm aware of because these are the kinds of things that interest me personally, future tech. If you look at Zoox.com, I just did just now, the car, it's the same thing. It's a 4-rider car, two facing, middle doors, the whole thing, little pod, and it's extremely superior in the fact that you don't have to build a track for it. You don't have to buy any right away. It just goes on the road. And if you wanted to build out a fleet of something like that, you could. And, and then if it didn't work out, well, you just had the cars. You don't have all this track that you've built that would, might end up just being a walking trail or something. So I can see where, a track-based system like this, because it goes city to city, might have some place in a transit regime, but I don't feel comfortable with it the way it is, and I would have a lot of questions if I was a council member looking at this thing, wondering. I would talk to some people that were, experts in transit and really find out if there's going to be a need for this in 2030, if it's going to be still technologically advanced enough to do the job. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. The next speaker is...
I would be happy to provide a quick response.
The next speaker is Mark Seeger.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Seeger. Thank you so much for the honor to present to everybody. My name is Mark. I'm the founder and the CEO of Rideways, so I can speak to some of the questions. I actually wanted to bring up the issue of safety earlier. Safety is really at the heart of everything we do, and the question that the councilwoman asked about what happens to a passenger in a vehicle when the vehicle fails, that is actually something that we very much care about. What we do is we immediately dispatch a vehicle to the stranded vehicle and immediately take the individual out if there's no medical emergency of any kind, and take them directly to their destination without stopping. If there's a medical emergency, as Habib has already pointed out, we already are coordinating with EMS, and we'll bring them directly to the nearest EMS access point. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Have a good evening.
The next speaker is Cinziana Todor, followed by Carolina Villaseca. Cinziana, go ahead.
Hello. I think I successfully unmuted myself. So let me just start by saying, very cool project. I really love the concept, and I am one of the first people to actually support public transportation. However, I have a really, really, really hard time wrapping my mind around the use of this service in our area. Possibly when the jobs come here and it's to relieve the added traffic related to the jobs coming to our area, I can definitely see a use for it. However, today, I'm not really sure how this will fit in our public transportation when the Tri-Delta buses are empty. And I know because I use that service in and out. Also, the BART, the extension itself, it's only used at capacity possibly, if that, during commute hours. Otherwise, the trains run empty. So I'm not really sure how we complement what we have today and if it's a good use of funds to invest in this type of services. So again, I'm just echoing the idea of longer range solutions to bring people to the jobs in Silicon Valley via Vasco Road, or even Livermore Tri-Valley area. That would be a win. Also, this service taking us all the way to Concord, One Creek area, possibly Lafayette, Moraga, where there's some jobs. I think I could see a better use of funding for this type of service. But other than that, just to mimic what we already have locally, and it's definitely underutilized, I don't know how I would vote if I were to be in a part of City Council. So thank you for listening to me, and I am looking forward to the days when this service will actually have a practical application and really benefit our community. Thank you.
The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca. Carolina, go ahead.
Unmute. Hi, thank you for the presentation. I looked through the whole thing, and I just want to kind of piggyback off of what Viviana said. People in Brentwood drive really far to go to work. They don't work anywhere near here. People hate taking BART. They will take it because parking is so expensive where they go to work. But they would prefer to drive. And you can ask BART, and their ridership is down because of COVID, but it was still down before COVID, and they're still trying to figure out how to get ridership up. Tri-Delta, like Viviana said, the buses, I've never seen a full bus anywhere in Brentwood ever. I've seen maybe 1 to 2 people riding the bus, but I've never seen those buses full. I'm really doubting how this is going to help that. BART and Tri-Delta do an enormous amount of ads and marketing and trying to reach to people and trying to make accommodations for people and just trying to get people inside the trains and inside the buses. Even if you take the bus from the Walnut Boulevard Park and Ride, it is very seldom full. And the other thing is that BART isn't always convenient if you're working late, which is why people also don't like to take BART. So when you start looking at would people use this to complement what's already in place that people are already not using, again, I want to just say that perhaps a better use of funds, Mr. Habib, would be to first survey the citizens of the cities that you're planning on working with to see if this is something they would even use. I would hate to spend $10,000 on something or even more for something that's going to be empty in Brentwood because we don't have a lot of jobs here. Most of them are retail. Most of them are part-time. We don't have companies here where people are driving to work here. Everybody leaves here. We're a bed and breakfast city. And until that changes, I just don't see the complementary nature of your service. I think in a city like San Francisco, where parking is just a nightmare and people trying to get around, maybe that would work. But I'm not sure about out here. I'm not sure. So I'm just throwing that out there for consideration. Thank you.
There's no additional speakers with their hands raised at this time.
Okay. Seeing that there are no additional speakers for public comment, we will close public comment and move to board discussion. If you could raise your hand if you'd like to further discuss. Councilperson Rary.
Yeah, I actually brought this to the city manager back in June of last year, and I thought it was something that I saw that Oakley was working with that company and getting financing for it, and I brought it to our city manager. I guess he reached out to both the company and to Oakley, and has since everybody's been getting together on this. You know, when you talk about taking buses, for me, if I was to, I went up to something in the city, to a conference in the city at the MTC's headquarters, and from the time I jumped in my Uber and took it out to BART, because there's no parking out there, and it was still an hour and 15 minutes for me to go from my house in Shadow Lakes all the way up to BART, and I believe it was about a $50 round trip for me to be able to do that, and that would be daily. If I was to take the bus, granted, it may only cost me $2 to jump on a bus, but for me, I would have to walk almost a mile to get to the one by John Muir, because the ones out by American Avenue only work for the school schedule. And then it's a 40-minute ride just to go through Brentwood and out to the Antioch BART station with all the stops in between there. So that's 40 minutes, and granted that could be $2 for that ride, and then another hour out there. So that's an hour and 40 minutes to get out to San Francisco. And as we know, when we're planning the Innovation Center at Brentwood, we've already reduced the footprint of the parking for BART from the 20 acres, I think, down to 10 acres is what it's at right now, is what they're proposing to us. And just like they do out in at what is it, Pleasanton, not Pleasanton, San Ramon, Bishop Ranch, out of Bishop Ranch. At Bishop Ranch, there is no BART access there. They actually have to jump in shuttles to go from the BART station to over in either Dublin or over in Dublin or Pleasanton, and jump on that and jump on a shuttle to go into the Bishop Ranch and then back again. So this would be our way of creating something that will allow people to jump in at their leisure or their hurry, depending on if they're late to work in the morning, and catch something 24/7, because the buses don't run 24/7. And while BART is not having as full schedules, there's going to be a time where we may be getting back to more of a normal thing. And is that this year? Probably not. Is that next year? Most likely. Will it be at full scale? Who knows? But I think it's something we should at least proceed forward on to see what will come of it. And especially if the city is not being asked to provide the funding on this, the funding is coming from outside agencies, different grants, and also from a private financing as well. I think it's something that we should at least look into and continue down that path. And I urge the rest of you to support this movement forward.
Thank you. Councilperson Meyer.
Thank you. Karen sort of answered Councilmember Mary sort of answered the comment I was going to make. But I was hoping that, Tim, that you could clarify for our callers the financial investment or lack of that is being asked of us tonight? Because I think there might be a little bit of confusion about that. Like, what actually are we voting on tonight?
Sure. The only expenditure the city's incurred so far was the $10,000 contribution with the other 3 cities of $10,000 each towards the feasibility study. There's no financial ask of the city at this point. There is a very concerted effort. In fact, we've had a workshop with at least one private sector partner with lots of capital and done major projects like this that is very interested. So there's a lot of hope and interest by the private sector. And I've also spoken with the executive director at CCTA, and they're very excited about this project as well and think there's some great state and federal funds that could come towards us. But no city contribution this time. The resolution that's before you tonight just authorizes staff to continue to work with AMG and Glideways to look at refining the route, looking at land right-of-way maps, those kinds of things, and prepare for any future approvals, any paperwork and design and planning documents. So supporting in that way, but no real financial contribution at this point.
And then to clarify, do you have an estimate of staff investment of hours and time?
It's been a monthly meeting for an hour, and we've had some time to review the feasibility study, so it has not been a significant time commitment by the cities thus far.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Mendoza.
Sorry. Like Councilmember Meyer, I just want to make sure everyone understood there's no additional funds being spent. It sounds like it's an hour a month of staff time. And while this might not be the best solution, I think that studying this and seeing how it goes helps us understand the future of transportation in our area. You know, this connects us on Sand Creek all the way down Brentwood Boulevard, which we are looking at the Brentwood Boulevard improvement plan. So I think that it's great to look at this for that also. And I just, you know, I don't think there's anything bad about it. I think I like it. I think if we could get it down Vasco, if there's any vision of anything like that, I would be happy if this is the first step to get that, because that is one of the number one complaints from people that live here is that Vasco traffic. So I would hope that maybe in the future we could do something like that and learn from this. That's it.
Thank you. I agree completely with all of our council persons' input on this. It is, in addition to this taking us to further public transportation like BART, you could also use this for local transportation as well. The fact that it does come down to Brentwood Boulevard is wonderful. And what a dream should it go down Vasco. That would be fabulous. I think absolutely right now, this is information through this study and through this process that the city can use throughout the future in addition to this project. So if there's no further conversation regarding this, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion as detailed in the staff report, adopt the resolution regarding the Glideways Dynamic Personal Micro Transit Project.
I second that.
We do have a first and a second, but Vice Mayor Rodriguez, you had a question?
No, it's okay, Mayor. It's all right. Thank you.
Okay, then could we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, moving on to item D2, staff update on the Brentwood Neighborhood Committee and request for council discussion and direction regarding the committee's duties, goals, and guidelines. And I'll turn it to Chris Farrow for the staff report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. The Brentwood Neighborhood Committee, BNC, was originally established by City Council as the Public Relations Committee in 1996. Since its inception, the committee has changed names and shifted its mission several times. The current committee guidelines are included in your agenda packet on pages 105 and 106. I have had the pleasure of serving as the staff liaison to the Brentwood Neighborhood Committee for the past 2.5 years. During this time, there have been numerous discussions amongst the committee members to revise the BNC duties, goals, and guidelines. The committee has been tasked with large-scale events that require more resources than provided to the committee. Over the years, the BNC has contributed to these events during the planning stages and by volunteering at the events, but the bulk of the event implementation and administration, including staffing and budgetary resources, have been provided by the Parks and Recreation Department. Because of these factors, the committee feels the Christmas tree lighting and home of the season programs should be the responsibility of the Parks and Recreation Department. The BNC would still volunteer at these events, but would not be responsible for the overall event planning and implementation. The committee instead would like to pivot their focus to smaller neighborhood events that would be more easily administered by a volunteer committee and emphasize the small town feel that so many residents cherish. Staff is requesting council to review the current BNC goals and guidelines and provide direction if it is determined that changes in scope are appropriate. And staff is available to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Councilperson Mendoza.
Hi, thank you, Chris. I was wondering about the two projects that they want the city to take over, the tree lighting and the home of the season, I think it was. Do you know how many staff hours it would take for the city to take that over? And what's the total financial impact when it comes to payroll?
Sure. So it's actually just really moving the responsibility on paper. The Parks and Rec Department staff already administer both of these programs, and so it's really just changing the language on the guidelines so that on paper it doesn't say it's the responsibility of the BNC. However, there are really no duties that would be changing. As far as the event itself, as long as they were still volunteering and providing support in that way, the department would continue to purchase the supplies that they have in the past and staff it in the same way that we have in the past.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry. Councilperson Meyer.
Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have 3 open seats right now? Is that right?
Actually, we have a maximum of 11 that can be on the committee, and we only have 5 members right now. And the reason for that is when the application period could open in January, the committee asked that we hold off until we had some clarification around this issue because they didn't want to fill the committee if they weren't sure exactly how they were moving forward.
So if I understand correctly, we're not able to fill any seats right now, but are the current commissioners okay with the amount of people they have on their team, if you will?
It was their choice to not open the application period because they didn't want to recruit if the mission or the goals were going to change. The application period would have been in January. They had this discussion far before that, and so they felt like they wanted to be able to provide some clarity as to what the committee is going to be moving forward before filling those vacant spots.
Okay, so then the decision really, as you mentioned, is just going from responsibility on paper. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they would need to have more commissioners so that they could actually be able to support this effort.
Not for those specific events. They are looking to take on some smaller events, and if that is the case, then yes, they would want to open the application period and move back up to their 11 members in order to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilperson Rarick.
Actually, if I could just make one quick clarification. So commissions don't decide if they want to keep filled. This is the council's direction to them. So staff agreed until we got some more clarification from council, we'd hold off on continuing that recruitment. So once we've got some clarity tonight, we'll resume that recruitment with that vision if it's changing at all.
So Tim, does that mean it doesn't have to be done at a certain time of year? We could do it now because there are openings?
Well, we want to do it when there's vacancies for any commissions that we have citywide. But when terms end, that tends to happen on a cyclical cycle. This one just had a lot of vacancies all at once.
Councilperson Rarick.
Yeah, I've got a question, Chris, regarding membership, and I ask this because I was on the original Brentwood Advisory Neighborhood Committee. We created the mission statement. We created the Christmas tree lighting. We created the Home of the Month, and we were the liaisons for City Council to our neighborhoods. Our neighbors were already coming to most of us with their concerns and wanting us to help address them. And so we were kind of asked to become part of this committee so that we could learn how to better assist residents. And I know it's changed over to more of doing events versus being liaisons and helping to direct residents to the appropriate staff member that we used to do as the Brentwood Advisory Neighborhood Committee. Our slogan was, "You can bank on us." That was what BANC was. You could bank on us to get it done. So we had neighborhoods that these were selected from, and you couldn't have two people from one neighborhood. And I know recently, I think there was four or five that were from Brentwood Hills and from Shadow Lakes all together on that, which kind of defeated the purpose of being from different neighborhoods. And the Home of the Month, we used to do a quarterly Home of the Month. So 4 times a year we would go out there, and it would be different neighborhoods. So if it was my turn, I would go through the area that was considered my neighborhood to find that Home of the Month, not a holiday Home of the Month, but people who took pride in ownership, who manicured their yards, and we wanted to reward them. And we rewarded them with not only a sign for their front yards, but we also rewarded them with, we worked with Home Depot. And Home Depot, if you drive up there, you'll see Brentwood Home of the Month. There's a spot that is saved right there at the front of the store for the Home of the Month winner. And I know with a drought, is one of the reasons why I was told that they backed off of doing the Home of the Month, because people's yards just weren't looking that great. But and I know we're going into a drought now as well, but that was how we represented our neighborhoods. And I think that based on what you're saying, there's been a really loss of focus on what this committee is supposed to do. Can you explain to me really, I mean, you say neighborhood, so what kind of neighborhood things are you talking about? And will they need an increase in funding then if they're going to do that? And are you allowing more than one from a neighborhood or an area of town? If you only have 11, shouldn't you be splitting these up throughout town so that everybody is represented throughout the town and not 5 in Shadow Lakes and Brentwood Hills? And I don't know when that changed, but, you know, if you can just update me on those things, I appreciate it.
Sure. So you're correct. In 2008, I read some staff reports from that time, and the committee was divided into 4 quadrants. They divided the city into 4 quadrants, and no more than 6 members could be from each quadrant. And they were more involved in things like the Citizen Emergency Response Team, CERT, neighborhood watch programs, things of that nature. So somewhere between there and 2012, 15-ish, somewhere in that range, it looks like that kind of charge changed, and that's when they started coming together to work on these events. And some of them they just participate in, so like Brentwood Night Out, that's actually a police department event that they do right along and participate in, you know, picking the winner and giving the prizes. The same with Hometown Halloween, they just participate in that event, they have a booth. to distribute during the trick-or-treat event. So somewhere, 15, 10-ish years ago is when that focus changed. That would be by direction of council. That's who develops the guidelines. So I think at this point, they're wanting to get back to their roots a bit. There hasn't been a lot of discussion necessarily of splitting them up by neighborhood, but obviously that is council's decision if you choose to go back to that model. They've been talking more about just getting into the parks, doing local neighborhood kind of activities, something as easy as planning a kickball game, and all the kids that live in the neighborhood come to the kickball game. So when you ask about budget, currently they have $2,000 in their budget, but they want to do more like just show up on a Saturday and there's games going on in the park, or invite PD to a PD versus, basketball game. The neighborhood kids come out and play versus PD. So they're looking at doing those kind of homegrown picnic in the park game kind of events. But obviously it's your decision. These were just brainstorming ideas that they had, really wanting to just keep that small town feel and bringing people out of the neighborhoods to get to know each other. They said with so many people having moved here, and this is a new community to them, that they really have lost that sense of knowing who your neighbor is, and they thought these types of events could get people out and talking and building networks together within their neighborhood. I hope that kind of answers your question, Karen. Is there something I missed along the way?
I guess I'm just disappointed. It went from something that was a very active committee into something that I guess I have a problem with the home of the month just being passed off to staff, because this was a matter of going out and finding pride in your own neighborhood. And the Christmas tree and the Christmas tree program has changed a lot. We would get out there. I don't know if you guys remember the conifer that was where the farmer is in City Park, but it wasn't a pine tree, but it was something like a pine tree. And we would decorate that each year, and we would have the carolers come out and sing and so forth. And it has changed tremendously as the city has grown to a huge tree and just performances by all the youth, which is just a great way to bring the community together. And I kind of like the idea that the Brentwood Neighborhood Committee was still kind of being the hosts of that, instead of staff being the hosts of it, unless they're looking at turning that even over to us for the city council to be the host. But the whole idea was to get people to know that there's a Brentwood Neighborhood Committee out there. And anyway, so I guess I'm a little frustrated with the way it's turned, and that's only because of helping to form it in the beginning. So I'll wait to hear what the rest of the council has to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, going back to a little bit in regards to Councilmember Rary, I think it's great that they're involved in some of these events and putting them together and things like that. And I wasn't part of the neighborhood committee, Brentwood Neighborhood Committees back when Karen was. But one of the things that my understanding of talking with different people, it was also part of helping create some of the leaders that have become either council members like Karen, Councilmember Rary, and others in the community, where it was something, I don't want to say it was being able to create steps for them, not only to be a voice for their communities, but to be now a voice for the larger community, right? And I just think that, like Councilmember Rary has mentioned, has gotten away from that. I think that it would be nice if we, one, it's great, the events and doing all that, but going back to figuring out who are some of our leaders within some of the districts. The beauty is now we have districts, right? I would look at how can we recruit, 2 or 3 different people from each district to participate in something like this, because a lot of times they're on the forefront of some of the issues and things that are going on, and maybe they could be a support to the council, but also to the city. in regards to giving us some feedback. And then at the same time, we can help them become the next leaders within this community in the sense of being in some type of position. So I really like that, and I know that, you know, Karen has mentioned it just recently, but I was talking to some of the people that were involved in that, and they also feel the same way, where that has gone away, and how can we get that back? So one of the things for me is, how can we, in regards to the recruitment, what would that look like? But also maybe focusing on the districts for that, and at the same time, not only doing events, but also some type of leadership. I don't know if it's training or outreach, because this group could actually help us develop better outreach that we're trying to do with our CIP, with Greg, with our CIP person, to be able to help us do more of that, right? So involving them in that process, not just put on events, but actually get them to be engaged in some of the outreach that we're looking at doing in our communities, because hopefully we recruit those for those communities. Yeah, so for me, I think that obviously, and then I think someone had said, one of the council members, is how do you determine on what community events are going to be selected, right? Or is there more community events on one side of town than others? And how do we determine that, right? And how we identified that yet? So I don't know. I just think it'd be great to, one, maybe look at the recruitment being in the districts, identifying how many, but at the same time, not only have them participate and engage in some of the development of some of these events, but more of the leadership and voice of those communities would be very helpful as well.
Thank you. If there's no more questions of staff right now, we will open public comment. I'll turn it to Margaret.
I received 0 written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I currently have 2 hands raised. Rod Floor, followed by Carolina Villaseca. Mr. Floor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. I wasn't really planning to speak on this, but listening to it, you know, Councilmember Ruri and Vice Mayor Rodriguez make really good points. I think, you know, yeah, there's something to be said for, you know, Home of the Month and, you know, organizing events. And these are valuable things, and these are things that I probably wouldn't really be able to do. I'm not an event organizer or a home judge. But I think that there's a lot more important stuff that a Brentwood Advisory Neighborhood Committee could do. It could become a vehicle for neighborhood involvement in our city government. We desperately need that. I know Vice Mayor Rodriguez has spoken on many occasions about it in his neighborhood particularly, but all around the city. You know, we have a city full of commuters. Carolina likes to call it bed and breakfast, and we don't have a way to connect everybody. And this committee could be so much more than an event planning committee. I like Vice Mayor Rodriguez's idea of having neighborhood committees and then have the bank be maybe the chairperson of each committee, so that we had you know, a citywide body, but within that citywide body, there should be more participation at the local level. And these committees could do so many things. One thing they could do is help neighborhoods understand what kind of development is coming, where they would like to see what in their neighborhood, work with staff ahead of time. So, you know, using the Goodwill fiasco as an example, those people, that neighborhood had to band together and come downtown and, you know, and really yell at the city because they had no representation in that process until pretty late on. There was no neighborhood committee already in place that could have told staff early on, look, this isn't going to work. We could have avoided so much hassle. Same thing, Deer Ridge, Shadow Lakes, we had to form our own committee to stop the rezone because there just was nothing from the city. There's nothing about this city that really pulls people together and pulls people into the government to communicate. And I think Vice Mayor Rodriguez had a really good idea of either the CIP or a full-time staffer to oversee this whole thing with the purpose of involving the community, getting our commuters more involved in their city government, and doing something really that has some significance. And again, not, I don't want to take anything away from events. And events is one of the things that was talked about. Mayor Bryant said, buy them, give them a cake. That's great. That's great outreach. But I think there's so much more that could be done. Thank you.
The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca.
Hi. So to kind of piggyback off what Rod just said, we need a full commission for this from the different neighborhoods, because this could be in conjunction with the marketing efforts of the city to do outreach. I mean, I just see it as a really wonderful opportunity to really get to know our residents better. Neighborhood Watch right now is being handled by someone crazy like me in my neighborhood. I called the police department and I got the resource officer to come to my house, and the neighbors came to my house, and we had a Neighborhood Watch meeting. And everything now is kind of being handled via Nextdoor, which is not the best way to handle things. But that's how people are communicating, because there are no committees. There's like, I just saw a post today like, oh, that apartment building across from Pioneer is awful. I'm like, well, that's great that you think so now that the ground is breaking and it's getting built, but this was approved years ago, and, it would have been really helpful to have your voice back then. And people are very concerned about other things that are happening in the city, but there's no good way to get everybody coordinated and on the same page. And I think that if you have representation from each neighborhood, you'll also get a better feel for what each neighborhood needs, because what my neighborhood needs may be different than, for example, what Johnny's neighborhood needs. And so if the city is just focused on events, yeah, people will come out and that will be nice, but then what? Then nothing happens. The event is put on, people come out, everybody talks, everybody goes home, and then nothing happens next until the next event. The farmers market is the perfect example. We get people from all around Brentwood and, Discovery Bay and Oakley and, you name it, they come. People see their neighbors, they're like, hi, neighbor, but nobody talks to anybody else because you don't know anybody else. And then everybody goes home. So I appreciate people shopping at the Brentwood Farmers Market, but that sense of community, of building a community, is not there. It's just people shopping, and then they go home. So, and you only talk to your neighbors. So I really think that maybe taking it back to what Karen was saying would be a really good idea, because as we keep growing, we keep disconnecting, and we keep losing sight of what each neighborhood needs. Thank you.
There's no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Thank you. So then at this time, we will close public comment. We will move on to Councilperson Mendoza.
I agree with everything that everyone was saying about needing representation. I do think we need it to be around town, just like we have district council people. I think we need district people on this commission. I do think we need the full 11. I mean, more if we can get them. I think that would be great. But making sure that it's evenly spread out. I do like them being the liaison between us, the city, and residents, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think they would be great at putting out correct information, because there's a lot of rumors that happen. Also explaining processes about how things happen. So a good one is the homeless, right? There's laws that we have to follow around the homeless, and this would be great to make them subject matter experts that then they can share the information. And then also, again, finding events that everyone in the city can attend but are specific to those neighborhoods would be great. But the other thing, I think we need to move forward with this, but I don't know if we're going to have enough time. Do we need to decide on events we want to support today, or things that we want to create today, or do we have a workshop that really defines, because it sounds like from what Councilwoman Rary was saying, it's changed a ton. So do we need a workshop where we sit down and really hash it out, which I think could take probably about 2 to 3 hours? Like, what do we really want it to look like? And do it right. I don't know if we need to speed it up tonight. I think that would be a disservice to all of our residents and the people who serve on the commission. They should be partaking in the conversation as well, those people that have been on and dedicated. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you. Councilperson Meyer?
Tim, did you want to answer some of those questions before I go? Because you might be answering my questions as well.
Sure. Yeah, there's no hurry to take any action. We wanted to bring this back to you so we could get some direction about what you envision this committee doing. We can certainly schedule another meeting and a special workshop with the community and really dive deeper on this issue. As noted, we have quite a few vacancies, so now really is the window of time to restructure it if you'd like before we go out for recruitment again.
Thank you. I have to agree. I like what everybody's saying. I think what Carolina and Rod were talking about with engaging Greg, our PIO, I wrote down in my notes that I thought I would love to see some brainstorming on feel-good campaigns. We talked about some of the newsletter stuff, like finding community members that we wanted to highlight for doing really great work in the community. I think there could be, subgroups within the commission. This one is going to focus more on council liaison, where this one might focus more on the smaller event planning, that kind of thing. I completely agree about the district and the representation across the city. I think there could be things like, setting up neighborhood trash pickups when it's safe to do that, if the city provides bags and such. I think there's a lot of really good things that can happen from this, and I believe that we currently have not just people in Shadow Lakes and Brentwood Hills right now, from what I understand, but I definitely think the idea of now using this as a recruitment opportunity is perfect. We'd have to figure out how we want to do some engagement and recruitment in the other parts of the city that aren't represented. But I really like all these ideas. I think there's so much potential here. I know there were some people that were applying for commission roles on previous commissions and did not get appointed. I'd love to see if they were interested in taking part. We had some incredible engagement from a few people that I thought would love to just to do something, like to really be represented in their community. I think I'd like to see some of them coming back and talking to us about this. So a lot of potential. I would agree with Councilmember Mendoza about digging in a little bit deeper and having some brainstorm sessions that aren't rushed tonight. So however that looks, I would be up for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilperson Rary?
Yeah, I would have to say, I'd like to see this come back to us as well. Originally this actually started with us working, the bank worked directly with the city manager in the city manager's office. I don't know when it changed to Parks and Rec. It may have been, at the change of city managers that somebody just decided that just wasn't something that they wanted to do anymore. We were taken on a tour got a bus, and we went on a tour of all the different sites or facilities, city facilities, and kind of like what we do with a new council member, but this kind of more on a brief type of thing, and even out to, we went and had a picnic lunch out at the John Marsh house. And learned about the John Marsh house. So it was an overall encompassing that really immersed us in what was happening within the city, and then also who we would need to contact for what. And I was contacted quite a bit by my neighbors saying, hey, I need help with this, and word spreads, and all of a sudden they know that you can help them with these things, and then it's to help resolve a problem before it becomes an issue for the city is kind of where we were as a liaison. So a speed bump, somebody's having problems in their neighborhood and the traffic's just speeding by there so much, and what can we do to what that liaison could do to facilitate getting a speed bump, or at least getting the street engineer out there in order to determine, is this something that is plausible to put a speed bump there, or do you want one there because of the noise that it makes in front of your house? So those are the types of things that we would help them go through, and it was because we were the fastest growing city in the state of California. We were for 10 years running, at least as far as we may have even been longer than that. And because of that, they wanted people who could help out the council. And now that we've grown even more, I mean, breaking them up by districts and you know, maybe even doing 3 from each district. Instead of having an 11-person, and I know it's always an odd number so that you get down to that vote, and the vote says, oh, it's tied, you know. So, but I think it would be fair to allow 3 in each one of the areas, and then try to even spread them out there so that they're not all in one neighborhood. As we know, our districts are wide. So anyway, I think we should continue this on to bring it back and try to get it back to where it was instead of taking more away from them.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, Karen mentioned something that was really good. I heard that other cities were doing it as well. Was one of the things that we did with their neighborhood committees is actually having coming out of the city manager's office. I'm not trying to give Tim more work or more meetings to attend, but it's something to speak, right, when you're coming from neighborhoods or part of the community, to actually be at the same table with some of our large city officials, right, and being able to make some decisions, but also be part of some of the change, right? So I think that, and I appreciate Karen mentioning that, because that was something that was brought up as well. I mean, Councilmember Rary, I'm sorry, Councilmember Rary. But like I said, we're not trying to add more work to Tim's plate, but then again, I think it would encourage people even to be more involved, because they actually see that we're sitting with people that are actually helping make some of the large decisions. So I agree with that. I think that maybe even looking at transitioning it from the Parks and Recs department into the city manager's office may be something we could consider. I don't think this is something that should be rushed neither. I don't think they're asking us to rush it. I think they were just trying to pick our brains to see what we were thinking and what directions we wanted to go into. But yeah, I think this is going to be something very, very positive for our residents, especially for the whole community. And I don't think it's something we should rush, but really make sure that we do it where it's going to be very impactful. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I agree with everything that everyone has said. There's some wonderful ideas here. I think the time for having committees in town just to have a committee has long passed. And so I'm going to ask Damien, with the wording of item D2, should we take the vote to move forward with the ideas that have been presented tonight, or should we just move it wholesale onto another time to bring it back and proceed with a workshop or whatever we get back from staff?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, I need to leave some of this up to the City Manager, because it will be his office and the Parks and Recreation Department that will be staffing this item in the next steps. It would seem that the Council has given staff a number of different ideas that you'd like to explore, and I don't think any of the specific ones need to be part of a motion, but just, I think, directing staff to come back with a future meeting so these ideas can be explored more fully and other ones can be raised would be appropriate. I don't know if the Council wants to consider having it as a joint meeting with the current members of the BNC, or if it would be one with just the Council. So, but I think just moving it forward at this time would be appropriate without having to go through a lot of specific ideas. But I'll leave the rest up to the City Manager.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just throw out one idea as well, just popped in my mind, is we could come back with an item where you actually make an ad hoc committee of 2 members of the Council to sit down with staff and come up with all these ideas and it can even work with the existing members of the BNC on various different ideas and concepts and then bring that back to the full council. The other alternative is to schedule a special city council meeting off our regular cycle and spend some time jumping through the different ideas.
Councilperson Mendoza.
Real quick, I had a question. So now I'm thinking, it's the chicken and the egg. If we're going to have about 6 new members, do we want to select members and then have them be part of the conversation? Or do we want to just do it with the 5 and then they get what we decide on? And then secondly, no, I think all 5 of us should be involved, because I think this is outreach and getting people involved, I think, is something we're all passionate about. I mean, I would want to be on it, and I can imagine there's a few other people that would want to be on this subcommittee. So I think we do a special meeting with everyone. I mean, unless someone says no, like two council people are enough. But I'm pretty passionate about getting people involved, so I would want to be included, and I don't know how that works if everyone else wants to be included.
Well, I think that from what I've heard tonight, most of the council feels exactly the same way. So at this time, I would just request from our city manager, do you have clear direction as to what we're asking from this item?
Yes, it sounds like we'll work with your schedules offline to get a special city council meeting with this as the agendized item to discuss all of the ideas and concepts. And to Councilman Mendoza, I guess if we have 11 members now, you can always reconstitute that if we're re-looking at the whole thing and looking at all the bylaws. How many members do you want? Do you want to do districts? Where do you want them focused? And how often do they report back to the council? Those kinds of things. So, yeah, we'll work with you on scheduling that in the next few weeks, a special city council meeting on the topic.
Councilperson Meyer?
Thank you. Do we have a breakdown, or can we get a breakdown for where our current commissioners reside within the city limits?
Yes, absolutely. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
And also include past bylaws or mission statements that have changed through the years, so that we can get an idea of what has happened.
Absolutely. We can pull all the staff reports from the committee's inception.
Thanks.
Councilperson Meyer? Oh, no? Okay, your hand's still up, so thank you, Chris, for the report, and we will just now move on from here since staff has clear direction. And with the indulgence of our council, I would like to move to item D4 and come back to item D3 because it could be lengthy. Item D4 is the consideration of recommendation for appointment of either Heather Luna or Linda Sindig to the Contra Costa County Library Commission to complete a term ending in June 2022. I did not interview these applicants, basically because although historically in the committees and assignments that don't answer directly back to the city council on a regular basis, but are really more of a community participant to have a voice in like the Library Association. I wanted to ask the council how you would like to proceed with this. Would you like to interview them yourselves? Would you like for me to interview it and use the process that has been in the past? And I wanted to ask you this before we moved forward with this item.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in here, I hate to be the wet blanket, but that seems to be my job sometimes. The agenda item really talks about the appointment of these 2 members, not discussing the process of appointing. It focuses, from what I recall, it focuses just on which of these 2 individuals should be appointed, not how to do your appointment process. And so I think that would be going a little bit beyond tonight, but staff can certainly come back at your next meeting with an agenda item to discuss this.
Okay.
And then I don't think, from what I understood, as staff was preparing the report, I don't think this is critical that it has to be done, immediately to make the appointment. So I think we can move fairly quick with this. and hopefully the next meeting, but I'm starting to get a little bit ahead of myself, and the city manager has just jumped on to let me know if that's possible.
Yeah, there's no urgency on these two appointments. The recruitment was done some 6-8 weeks ago, and so they are waiting and ready. So the agenda is presented, and it is the mayor's recommendation, and the council supported that recommendation. You could do that tonight, but if you'd like us to come back to agendize the discussion more broadly, I think it might still be important to get some feedback to the mayor's original question without any decisions tonight, and we can come back if we need to, unless the mayor wants to make a recommendation and see if there's support.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, I just want to know, so if the mayor didn't have an opportunity to interview them, did anybody, or how did that work? Obviously, I know it's a recommendation of the mayor, but I mean, how did that work, I guess? Because they're on here, right, to be put on these different groups, on these commissions. So I'm just wondering, did anybody interview them or talk to them?
Well, interviews aren't required. That's usually a best practice, but the mayor can recommend them if you'd like to call them, if you'd like to interview them, however he wants to come up with that recommendation. And if there's not a comfort level tonight, then we can certainly bring this back.
Well, I would prefer to bring it back simply because of the changes in the processes that we've already seen in other decisions from the council. And so if we could do that and just bring it back in that form, I would appreciate it.
And just to clarify, with having the whole council interview them in the council meeting, is that what you're asking?
So I will interview them. I will also come back and we can. I'd like it worded so that should the council desire to interview them beyond the interview process that I give them, that we could do that at that time.
Okay.
And if they choose not to, then I could have a legitimate decision to make at that time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Mendoza.
Yeah. Do you want to have a second person with you interviewing them, or no? Usually you have one. Like usually you have the vice mayor. Is the vice mayor going to be with you?
No. On this interview, it would just be me with forming a recommendation, then coming back in the next council meeting. If that process is okay with the rest of the council, then I'll make a recommendation. If it's not, we'll have the council interview them and make a recommendation.
I would feel comfortable if you came back and could verbally tell us the qualifications that led you to that decision. Just a little bit more transparency would be helpful. Would you be comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So Tim, if you have direction, then we will remove item D4, and then we will move back to item D3. And item D3 is the 2021-2022.
Should we be continuing that to a future agenda item?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I had just viewed that as the mayor pulling his request, request. You could take a vote if you'd like. I don't know if it's necessary. It was his direct request. He's just pulling it for a future meeting. I don't know if the council needs to take action on it. If it was a staff introduced item, that would have been a different story. Then you'd be correct, Councilmember Rary.
Thank you. So item D3 is the 2021-2022 redistricting process for future city council member district boundaries, potential direction to staff on the redistricting process, community outreach, and if one is to be selected, the type of redistricting commission. And I'll turn this to City Attorney Damian Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's agenda item stems in part from Councilmember Mendoza's future agenda item on redistricting commissions, as well as because the city has a little less than a year to complete the process. And I think we all know that year is going to pass by very quickly. And so following receipt of updated census data from the 2020 census, California cities with electoral districts are required to update or redistrict those boundaries based on the new population numbers. This process occurs every 10 years, And for Brentwood, this must be completed by April 17, 2022. So as I said, just a little less than a year. Regarding the specifics of tonight's agenda, I just want to go through what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to cover several different topics. First, we'll briefly review the 2019 process. Then we'll turn our attention to the upcoming process and look at redistricting requirements as well as public outreach, and then a discussion on and information provided on redistricting commissions, go over a draft schedule as well as estimated costs. Then there will be time for your questions, public comment, and then discussion regarding next steps on the process, on the public outreach, and whether to go with a commission, and if so, what type. So, like many cities in California, the creation of Brentwood's district stemmed from a legal challenge of its then at-large electoral system for city council members. And in that, city council members in 2019 were elected, 2018 I should say, the last election, before we went to districts, were elected at large, which meant the whole city voted on council members. In January of 2019, the then city council declared its intent to transition from the at-large system to electoral districts to district elections, and outlined specific steps to be taken during that transition. From January to June of 2019, they took public testimony and input at 4 public hearings, directed the preparation of draft maps for public review and comments, and ultimately amended the municipal code to create 4 council districts, district election process, as well as a final boundary map. And your first district elections were held on November 3rd, 2020 for districts 1 and 3. Your next ones for 2 and 4 will be held on November 8th, 2022. So when the 2020 census, it's been completed, but it's not yet been finalized. There were some news stories just recently about some information coming out, but it's still not finalized. But it is time now to start the 2021-22 process to revise the boundaries to reflect these new population numbers. Our current districts are based on the 2010 census and are over 10 years old. Since 2019, since we did the process in 2019, the state legislature adopted what they called the Fair and Inclusive Redistricting for Municipalities and Political Subdivisions, or the Fair Maps Act, which changed the procedures that we did in 2019. Among other things, it places much greater emphasis on public outreach than the earlier laws required. And some examples of this, you still have to have your 4 public hearings for public input about the district composition. At least one of those hearings needs to be held before the maps are drawn, at least 2 after the maps are drawn, and at least 1 held on a Saturday or a Sunday or after 6 p.m. on a weekday. Steps also must be taken to encourage public participation, particularly in language minority communities, by way of news coverage, local community groups, availability of live translation at certain meetings, and a dedicated web page for redistricting. As I'll continue to remind you throughout this presentation, and you can see it up here on the slide, everything needs to be completed by April 17th, 2022. And this is in large part to allow the County Elections Department to take the data from all the cities in the county with district elections and get it put in place for the November election. And so that is our deadline. Now, looking at the procedural requirements for redistricting and drawing the boundaries, as I stated, the procedures are different than what we went through in 2019, especially as it relates to the creation of boundaries and prioritizing boundary criteria. In 2019, the City Council had a much larger say in prioritizing what that criteria was. Today, the state now does much of that for you. The boundary criteria that the state has put in place, some of it is the same, but substantially equal populations in each district, that remains the same, as is compliance with the United States Constitution, the California Constitution, and the Voting Rights Act. These laws require that districts not be drawn to using race as a main criteria, but also not discriminating based on any racial or language minority, against any racial or language minority. Once those standards are met, then the boundaries must be drawn based on the following criteria, and you see it on the screen, in that order of priority. And so the most important is, as much as possible, they need to be geographically contiguous. And what this means is the district can't be separated by another district. It needs to be all together as one district, not separated by other districts. You need to respect what they call communities of interest. And these are populations that share common social or economic interests, like neighborhoods, in essence, like neighborhoods. Also, a boundary should be easily identifiable and understandable by the residents. It encourages that districts be bounded by natural or man-made barriers, for example, creeks or the railroad tracks here in Brentwood, or major roads. Those are some boundaries, natural or man-made, that would apply. As much as possible, the fourth criteria, districts should be geographically compact, and so that nearby populations are not bypassed in favor of more distant ones. And so finally, once those four are looked at, also the districts cannot favor or disfavor a particular political party. And that's less important in Brentwood, where our elections are nonpartisan, but it is one of the requirements for the criteria. Now, regarding public outreach, along with the required public hearings that we discussed, the city must take steps to encourage residents, including those in underrepresented and non-English speaking communities, to participate in the public review process. The steps these steps include good faith efforts to provide redistricting information to media organizations and local community groups. Also, we are required to provide at certain hearings, the required hearings, live translation services for applicable languages when asked at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. Also, we need to publish at least 5 days before a hearing the date, time, and location of it, and as well as establish and maintain a web page dedicated to the process, as I said earlier. Along with the required steps, staff would recommend the active use of social media, as well as online interactive tools such as a specific email address to accept public input on the process, as well as an interactive system to allow the public to draw and submit boundary maps. Now, as brought up during Councilmember Mendoza's future agenda item, there are several optional methods for updating boundaries, including the establishment of one of three types of commissions. And with the next several slides, I'll review the options available to the council. And these would be the city council process, an advisory commission, an independent commission, and a hybrid commission. And in your packet of materials, there is a comparison table which is attached to attachment B. Now, the first option is where the city council, where you take the lead in the process. As the council did in 2019, you would hold the hearings and take testimony directly from the public. In addition, you'd evaluate the map options and make a final decision on the preferred map. It's probably the least costly of the options and allows you to hear from the public directly before making a decision, and not via commission or not at all. As you'll see, some of the commissions don't permit you to take that kind of testimony. On the other hand, depending on the map selected, it could subject you to allegations of favoring incumbents with your decision. So there are pros and cons with all of these different commission options, as well as with the city council option. So we'll next turn to the advisory redistricting commission. And this is similar to your existing commissions, Parks and Recreation, Planning, Arts, where you would create the commission, you'd interview and appoint its members, and it should be noted, though, that state law prevents you or your family members from being on it. You would still apply. You would still create the commission, appoint the members. The commission itself would take public input and provide you with recommendations. But while it may conduct the first required hearing before the maps are drawn, after that, you as the council need to hold the other three hearings. The commission can't do that in your stead. But the commission can hold additional hearings on its own to take public input or to review maps. But at the bottom line is you would approve the final map. And there's no requirement using this commission that you accept the commission's recommendation, whatever that may be. This is probably one of the more time-intensive and potentially expensive commissions, because it adds a number of additional meetings to the process, most of which would most likely need to be attended by staff as well as our special counsel and our demographer, and that does add to the cost. On the other hand, it does allow another body to take public testimony on your behalf and offer map recommendations for your consideration. The next commission is the Independent Redistricting Commission, and their title really accurately summarizes what they do. And we'll explain that. I'll explain that just a second. Once they're appointed by an independent body, they do everything. Everything you would otherwise do. They hold the public hearings, all the required ones. They review the boundary maps, and they ultimately decide on the final map for the city. And you have no role in that map process. Regarding member appointments, you don't make those appointments to this commission, but you do decide how the appointing body will be selected to appoint these members. And then that body, that independent body, will select the commission members. Oftentimes, in doing the research on this, what we found is that the interviewing and appointing body is often a group of retired judges with no connection to a particular city. They're selected, and then they meet, they review the applications, and then they interview the applicants, and then they make a selection of the commission. At the state level, their body for redistricting at the state level, that independent body interviews and appoints a group of identified commissioners, potential commission members, and then a subset of those applicants are randomly selected, and then they appoint a final set of commission members from the remaining applicants. This does take a lot of time, as you might imagine, if you went through the state process. Regarding committee members themselves, unlike an advisory commission, state law places a number of restrictions on who can serve and what they can do before they're appointed, what they can do while they're appointed, and what they can do after they've served in the commission. And when I say what they can do, it's really what they can't do. And let me just give you some examples of this. Before service, an applicant or a commissioner can't have been a candidate or have been elected to the council for a period of 8 years prior to their application. And this applies both to the commissioners as well as their family members. They can't have held a disqualifying position for the past 8 years for the commissioner or their spouse, or the past 4 years prior to their application for their non-spouse family members. And just by way of example, a disqualifying position includes an officer, an employee, or a consultant for a candidate, a campaign committee, or a political party, or it also includes someone who's contributed $500 or more to a council candidate in one of those 4 or 8 years. So if in any one of those years that person has contributed $500 to a city council candidate, then they would be precluded from serving on the commission, or if one of their family members had done that during a shorter period of time. During their service in the commission, they cannot participate in any city council campaigns, any local campaigns, I should say. And after their service, for a period of 5 years from their appointment, they cannot be a candidate for elected office in the city. In addition, and so that is either the city council candidate or the mayor's race. But in addition, they can't be a candidate for a district if that was drawn by their commission. So if they had a part in drawing the district boundary, they cannot be a candidate for city council until the new district boundaries are drawn in 2031. So until that occurs, as long as their boundaries are still in place, they cannot run for any of those districts. And then after service, for a period of 5 years from appointment, they can't be a candidate for elected office in the city. Oh, I've gone over that. Sorry. This is, I promise, this is the longest slide we're going to have. It'll go a little quicker after this. In addition, 2 years after, also for 2 years after the appointment, they can't be appointed to any other commission or office. I've talked with special counsel about this, and they've done some research for us, and none of us are aware. We haven't seen any independent commission used in a general law city like Brentwood thus far. They're more typically used for counties or charter cities. And Brentwood is a general law city. There's not a lot of, we haven't seen any examples of it being used for a city such as Brentwood. As with any of the commissions, staff would assist them with their meetings, similar to how we assist you with the city council meeting. But given the independence of this commission, we can't predict how many meetings they're going to end up holding. They're required 4 hearings, but they could hold more than 4 hearings, and we don't, and you don't have any control over that. Whatever they set up, that's what would happen, which is going to make it. We'll get to the fiscal impact. It's going to make it very difficult to estimate the costs associated with a commission like this. And I've caught myself. I've been saying committees throughout, but it really is a commission. So my apologies for that. I just caught myself there. Also, should this independent commission's maps be challenged, the city would have to pay for the defense of those maps, and it would be something you'd be defending maps you did not create, that an independent body created, but we still need to pay for the defense of that. And then finally, given the many limitations on commission members and some of our recent challenges with recruitments, there is a concern about getting a sufficient number of qualified applicants to even be considered by the selection process. So there are some challenges if we went forward with this particular process. On the other hand, what it does give you, the independent commission, is it likely limits any public questions about the impartiality of the process and of the final map that's selected, because it truly is independent of you in what they're doing. Our final commission, I promise this is going to be a lot shorter, is a hybrid redistricting commission. And the reason this is going to be shorter because it is near identical to the independent commission. So everything I just said about the independent commission, it applies to the hybrid commission, except for one thing. And that is when they develop the boundary maps, they come up with 2 or 3 or 4 or more boundary maps for your consideration. And you are allowed to select one of those boundary maps that the commission recommends. The catch is you cannot amend that map. So whatever map is selected, the council cannot amend it, but they can approve. They have some choices there. And so the concerns are similar regarding the cost and applicant concerns as it was with the independent commission. On the other hand, it does provide a level of impartiality that you wouldn't have with some of the other processes, but it also does give you some say in the selection of the final map, even if you're unable to change it. Now, turning to the draft schedule, no work with maps can start until the city receives the 2020 census data from the federal government. Originally, the states were supposed to receive the data by March 31st, 2021. I think yesterday, the Census Bureau said that they anticipate getting it to us, to the states by August 16th. I still have a October on my slide here because I'm not convinced that we're going to get it when they say we're going to get it. I want to leave that cushion in there. So the schedule. Oh, and then once the data is received from the states or from the federal government, then California needs to update their database before they can publish information and give it to the cities, and that could take up to a month, maybe even 6 weeks for the state to put it in the format to get to us. So it's not just August 16th we can start the process. We do need to wait for the state to take some actions. And so the schedule you have before you is based on the assumption we're going to receive the data from the state in October 2021. The schedule may need to be revised depending on what you end up doing with the commission. But from May to August, what we propose is we start creating the community outreach process and start creating the city's redistricting webpage. And if a commission is decided, then is selected, then we need to use that time to create the commission and get the members selected. So when we do get the data, the commission can start the process, can start the review process, the hearing process, and we can keep moving. So from October to November, there'd be at least one public hearing before the maps are drawn, and then from November to February of 2022, there need to be those other 3 hearings with the maps, review the maps, leading to the adoption of the final map. From February 2022 to April 2022, I put a little cushion there, another cushion there for unanticipated delays. Ultimately, as I've said, becoming a broken record with this one, April 17th, 2022 is our deadline for the process to be complete and the final map and district boundaries adopted by that date. So that is our date. Moving to the fiscal impact of this item, like the schedule, it's an estimate. It's one we try to be conservative on because we want to make sure that we're trying to give you the worst case scenario. We're hopeful it'll be less money, but some of it we just don't know, and I'll explain that in just a second. In 2019, the process cost approximately $87,000, and that included the special legal counsel costs as well as the cost for a demographer. And in addition, it included the state-required reimbursement of plaintiffs' attorneys' legal fees and costs. So that's what that included. If a commission is not used and the council leads the process, and we have the 4 required hearings, we estimate the cost of general fund to be $100,000. And this includes the demographer, special legal counsel, as well as the public outreach efforts that I indicated are going to be greater than we've done in the past. If the commission process is selected, it starts to become more difficult to estimate the cost of this process because we don't know how many meetings the commission would want to hold. Nor if those are going to be in addition, if it's an advisory commission, if it's the advisory commission, how many more will they be in addition to your meetings that you're going to have? In addition, there are going to be costs associated for the selection of the commission. In particular, if we need to go through for the independent or the hybrid model, where we have to select the appointment commission or appointment committee, whatever we end up calling that there will be a cost to that as well. Our estimate right now is it's going to be it could be as much as 1.5 to 2.5 times higher than the council-led process, or $150,000, $250,000. And again, we're trying to be conservative with our estimates and trying to be as realistic as we can with them. Whatever process is selected, be it the council process or a commission process, a general fund budget amendment will be required, and that will be coming before you with the midterm budget requests. But I've got to give a lot of compliments to our finance department because they're always thinking ahead. And another item in your midterm budgets is going to be a request to annually set aside 10% of what we anticipate the total cost to be of redistricting. So in 10 years, we will have enough money to do the next process without having to impact the general fund as much as this year is going to be impacted. So they're banking the money away over in a reserve account to allow us to do this process again in 2031. Now, finally, regarding your next steps for tonight, and I promise I'm just about done with this presentation. You're going to have the opportunity to ask me questions. We also have Robin Johansson from the law firm of Olson Remcho on the line who can assist as well if it's something I'm unable to answer. Then we can take public comment. You can take public comment. And then finally, there'll be time for discussion and direction on what you'd like to do with this item. As a reminder, what we're looking at for direction tonight is the process, and if you want to select a commission, and if so, which one it will be and what the parameters are for it. And then if you have any input on the public outreach process. And with that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Councilperson Mendoza.
Hi, thank you, Damien. I'm super excited about this, but I do have a question. Martinez said their packet says that they're selecting at random. So I think that you said like the judges would pick, but Martinez says random. Can we do that same thing, do a random choice?
I'm not sure what type of commission Martinez is using. So I wouldn't want to answer that. Are they, if they're using
They're independent.
Independent?
What they've chosen, yeah.
And I guess I'd want to see what they mean by a random process, Councilmember Mendoza. It might be possible, but the key of all this is it really does need to be truly independent of you. And I believe that it's normally done with another body making the appointment. But it may be possible. I'll ask Ms. Johansson if she has heard of this type of process, if it's something that we could look into.
And I might just be reading it wrong. That's what it says: 7 members and 2 alternates selected by random drawing.
Good evening, Council. I think, as I understand what Martinez is doing and what the law would require, you have to start with an applicant pool that meets the requirements of the elections code, and then once you have that applicant pool that's been selected, and that's really the big issue is, who's going to be selecting that applicant pool, then you can do the random drawing, but you've got to make sure that you have your pool set up and that the people who are in it are eligible.
Okay, so that could save us some money if we do that way, I think, a little bit. My other question is, can we have criteria where we have a set number of equal people, residents from different districts? So our 1 through 4, could we say we want 2 to 3 from each district so that it's evenly spaced throughout the city and everyone gets an equal voice?
Yes, I believe, as I understand the laws, you can put stricter requirements on the commission membership. And as long as it doesn't discriminate and think, it's not going to violate another law by doing that, but certainly it would seem to make sense that you have your commission representing each area of the city, and it doesn't represent just one area of the city. So I think you could certainly do that, and that could certainly be one of the criteria. Okay.
And then it said that we needed a tool available to the public so they can do kind of a plug and play of what it looks like, right? And it's funny because someone just asked me about, are we going to have a tool? And I didn't even know we were going to have a tool, so that's great. Do we know how soon that tool will be available? I'm assuming we have to wait for the data to be loaded, but how soon after the data is loaded?
I would have to talk with our demographer. It will be, I believe it'll be through his website. And you're absolutely right. We can't do anything until the data is loaded, until we have the data. And so probably nothing until, I'd say October, November, around there, depending again on when the state gets the data from the feds and the feds get the data and the state gives us the data from them. So it could be as late as October. But, I haven't worked with the tool that he has on his website. Robin, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to use it for other clients, but I understand that it is interesting.
Well, the difficulty that we've had in the past was that there are licensing requirements for these tools, and they're very expensive. So my memory of what we've done, in the last 2 or 3 years was to provide data on the website that would have all of the demographic data that people would need in order to work out their own maps, and a way of allowing them to submit maps, even hand-drawn ones, if that's what they want to do. So we're going to have to look at this licensing requirement, I think, to see whether we can have a tool that actually lets someone draw a map that meets all of the various equal population and Voting Rights Act criteria. And that's something at this point I'm not quite sure about.
I believe our last demographer had that because I remember other people making maps from it. So if we're using the same demographer, they'll probably have that for us.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. We were able to provide, Michael Wagaman was our demographer, if you recall, and we were able to provide a way in which people could do it. There are very, very sophisticated mapping tools that I suspect he showed you. I don't believe I was at any of your meetings where Michael was going through those mapping exercises, but some of that is a licensing requirement, but he can provide a mapping tool, I think, on the website.
Okay. And if we were to decide on, the commission ones, do we decide tonight on how many people we want in the commission and then the criteria, like I just mentioned, regarding districts?
It would be helpful to get as much direction as possible tonight. At a minimum, if we could get if you want to do a commission or not, and if you want to do a commission, what type of commission, and then what I propose that staff would then come back with a staff report formalizing the the council's action, as well as setting the guidelines of the commission, the guidelines of the, as you just said, the residency requirements of members, things of that sort. So if the residency side of things is something the council would like to give direction on, that'd be terrific. If you would like to give direction on the number of commissioners, that would be helpful as well. The more information we can get tonight, the better. For the easier your next staff report will be, and hopefully easier the meeting will be.
Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Councilperson Meyer.
Thank you. 3 questions. The first one is, you mentioned that of the commissions, the most time-intensive and costly would be the advisory commission, but we're also struggling with giving an actual estimate for the independent or hybrid. If you consider the advisory to be the highest, do you have a degree for the other 2?
That was a tough one to write, Councilmember Meyer, because there are so many unknowns, as I said. With regard to the advisory, one of the expensive parts of that we were concerned about is that they're going to be duplicating your meetings. And so it could be double the meetings that we'd otherwise have for the city council members, if it was just the city council process. For the independent and the hybrid commissions, I think the expenses could come with the appointment of the members if we have this independent body appointing them. And it also could come with their meetings. And we don't know that they're required to have 4, but they could have more. And while you may be able to put some limitations on the advisory commission, you have no ability to do that on the other 2 commissions. And so whatever they want to do, they can do by way of meetings. And so we can't predict what that would look like.
Okay. You mentioned that most general law cities do not choose independent. They are more typically used for charter cities or counties. Why is that?
I'm going to turn that one over to Robin. I don't have a reason why. It's just something that we observe.
It may have more to do with the fact of their size than it does with the status as a general law city. The cities that have independent commissions are mainly your larger cities like San Francisco, San Diego. The County of Los Angeles had one imposed on it by the legislature, and they actually sued to try to get out from under it, but they weren't successful. So I'm not sure, whether what we're looking at is just more a matter of charter amendments that have perhaps come up through the initiative process or been put on the ballot by the city council and then voted by to make that change by the voters.
Okay, thank you. The final question is beyond Martinez. Do we know what some of our surrounding cities or comparably sized and managed cities are doing? Which version they're using?
Should I answer that?
I was just going to say a lot of them are doing what we're doing right now. They're having a discussion. I believe Concord is doing it tonight. I think they're having a discussion on what they want to do. And I need to just give credit where credit's due. You'll notice that our staff report and the Concord staff report are going to be fairly similar. And I have to give credit to the city of Napa, who really wrote a wonderful staff report that we use to base ours on. And so I want to give credit to my colleagues in the city of Napa. But so the cities are going through this process right now because we all recognize that this is coming. It's going to be coming quickly. And I know a lot of them are scrambling to get legal counsel. They're scrambling to get demographers, and we have that. We're good to go with that. And so I don't have an answer myself. Robin may know some other cities and what they're doing, but right now a lot of them are doing what we're doing right now is having this conversation and getting direction.
Okay.
The report I just got was that Concord has decided to stick with a council-driven redistricting process tonight. That was the decision that they made.
Thank you. I was just going to make a final comment. I know, too, that there are a lot of bills in the legislature this year that would potentially change this process if it were happening a year from now. And I think a lot of that's around the transparency issue. And so that's something I'm considering here. Thank you.
There are no further questions of staff. Then at this time, I will open public comment. Margaret?
I received 0 written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I currently see 4 hands raised. We will start with Rod Floor, who will be followed by Carolina Villaseca. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. I didn't write a speech for this tonight. It pains me to have to even discuss this, but it's a matter I have to address, and it's something that everybody in this city should know about, and I'm making sure they do. I was one of the very few residents in attendance for the last districting sessions, and what I saw was appalling. I saw for 4 meetings, the demographer, presented all the information, came up with some maps, presented some great options, and then at the very end, when it finally came to the hands of the city council disgraced themselves. They moved lines to include the residents of Claudette Staton in a district she preferred, and the residents of Johnny Rodriguez into a district that he preferred. This was, if it was at the state level, it would clearly be a violation of the state constitution. It was said to me that it was legal because it wasn't at the state level, that the Constitution does not apply at the city level. I disagree with that. I believe the Constitution was slowed down. I know that the First Amendment applies to every government under the federal government, even though it says Congress shall make no law, and I believe the state constitution is the same. I do not intend to argue with the attorney on that in court, but I don't believe that he would prevail if he made that argument. Be that as it may, Councilmember Rodriguez in particular really moved a lot of the map just to get his house into a district where he said he deserved to represent those people, even though he doesn't want to live next to them. And so I think that having seen that and having seen Mayor Bryant, at that time Vice Mayor, be complicit in that, I want to make sure Karen Rary was there. She voted against it. She was the only council member that took the principled stand and did not vote for the gerrymandered map. I do not believe that Mayor Bryant nor Vice Mayor Rodriguez have conducted themselves in a way to where they deserve the opportunity to gerrymander another map. They have proven themselves to be untrustworthy. Nobody in this community can trust them to do it without self-interest, and especially the mayor, who's also taken huge sums of money. And so therefore, I am asking for the hybrid commission so that when the recommendation comes to the city, the mayor and the vice mayor cannot jigger that map to their own benefit, which is the most corrupt thing I have ever seen this city council do. I just want you to know. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Carolina.
Good evening. I'm piggybacking a lot of other speakers tonight, so here goes. I actually sat with a group of people in my friend's house, and we did the whole map thing, and we submitted maps which were ignored. Now, none of the recommendations that we turned in were taken under consideration. It became quite as a shock to all of us when each member of the previous city council ended up with their own district. Like, how did that happen? Like, that was amazing. Like, it was a miracle of God that everybody who was on the district, on the city council, actually ended up with their own seat. That never happens. So I just want to make sure, because there was a lot of talk of who got paid, cronyism, how did that happen? This is just so wrong. It looked really bad. The optics from the outside looking in were terrible for the existing city council. So I want to make sure that nobody on the current city council gets painted with that brush of, oh, they gerrymandered the map, because I think that's the worst thing that could happen. The city council is working really hard to make improvements in Brentwood. We would like those improvements to continue. So to avoid any gerrymandering or hint of gerrymandering, I think the hybrid commission is actually the best one. It is more expensive, but when you consider that this work will affect the city council for 10 years, it's actually not that expensive. If you get it wrong, like last time, you're stuck with it for 10 years. And so it's really, really important. The map tool is also super, super important. And maybe this time around, the hybrid commission will have a chance to take in the input from the residents of the city of Brentwood, which were completely ignored last time, and be able to incorporate some of the ideas that our very creative, well-informed citizens have. I would really love to see that. We also want to make sure that there is as much transparency as possible, and to make sure that when the maps are released, there won't be an opportunity for challenges. If this process is done correctly, the idea that somebody would sue is greatly minimized, because everything has been transparent, it's been well communicated, city council hasn't touched it, and they may not benefit from it in the long run, right? So that's my 2 cents for tonight. Thank you.
The next speaker is Antonio Xavier, followed by Cinziana Todor. Mr. Xavier, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm here to speak against the council being the sole decision maker in the districting process, because I was not happy with the results of the last districting process. I am adamantly opposed to gerrymandering and dirty politics. The last process appeared to be tainted by both. Since that time, we had our first ever district elections and a new mix of council members sit before us. This time around, I ask that the council take a small step back and share the decision-making power. If you want to earn back the trust and faith of the residents, I strongly suggest you go with the hybrid system. I ask that you form a commission to create districts based solely on the information from the census and the requirements of the state. I ask that the commission give zero consideration to current residences of the current council members. I ask that the council limit the council's own involvement to a vote among the final proposals only. This split of power between the council and the commission creates a natural set of checks and balances in the redistricting process. The hybrid approach would offer the most transparency and the least chance for the appearance of corruption and impropriety. Thank you.
The next speaker is Cinziana Todor. Cinziana.
Good evening again. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We all heard the horror stories from the last time and the disappointment they created within the community. We are really a community that treasures transparency and due process. So any option that prevents Mr. Rodriguez to exercise his drawing skills and any other council member in debt to special interest, and I am talking about Mayor Bryan, any of those options would be fit for Brentwood. I am proposing the hybrid option because it minimizes interference from Old Boys Club and special interest and maximizes transparency and community involvement. Also, it reinforces checks and balances around the processes that we're trying to drive in our city. And if there's a money problem, as it was brought up, I think if we minimize and actually stop financing pet projects like the youth center and extending centers that are not bringing a lot of value today to our community, and also another project that build politicians' resumes without any benefits to the city, we will have enough money to do something that's for the future, and it will put us in line with cities that do right by their citizens. Thank you.
The next speaker is Marisol Valles. Marisol, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to take the time as a citizen of Brentwood to voice my preference to doing the hybrid model. I just want to make sure that the residents have time and their input is listened to, and that it's not just all the city council making the decision on this. And that, so if you can please take a look and vote for the hybrid model. Thank you so much.
I see no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Thank you. So at this time, we will close public comment and move into council discussion. If you have discussion that you'd like to have, Councilperson Rary.
I have to agree with the people who spoke during public comment that we had we actually put our residents where we lived up on that map so that we would know where we lived, which was something that we were discouraged from doing, so that maps aren't gerrymandered to fit a specific council member or council members. As we've seen, I mean, we are nothing like what Martinez is, but there were a lot of people who were very frustrated after the last drawing of the districts, and I do agree that we should look at the independent hybrid model for our commission.
Sorry, my computer's messing up. Council Member Mendoza.
I actually have a lot of stress about bringing this up because I think as a council we're getting to a better place than day one, and I worry about moving back, and I don't want to move back. But I also have been, I was at that meeting when the lines were moved, and I can remember sitting there at that meeting, and that is one of the reasons I decided to run, was because of the gerrymandering that happened that night. It made me feel sick to my stomach then. It makes me feel sick to my stomach now, even talking about it. But I think we need a hybrid independent model, because we could roll tape, and I think if you were to watch it, you know, and watch it now, I don't think anyone would be happy with what happened. And it was the first time out. Mistakes happen. But I think knowing what was wrong and moving better in a better direction is better for all of us, and it will gain community confidence. It will, again, I think we're moving to a better place, and I want to see that continue. And I think us being hands off and not being an influence on any of the maps is a step in that right direction for all of our residents. So again, I'm sorry, I just want to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Meyer.
I wanted to mention that people are mentioning independent commission and hybrid commission and kind of interchanging the two. I think hybrid does sound like our best option. And I think it hasn't been noted yet, but I think guessing every one of us at this point understands that if our address is pushed into someone else's district, so be it. It appears that we're all kind of moving forward with that feeling that this way the community is deciding it's not us. If I get no district next time based on this whole process, that's the way it is. It's just the way it is. So I would agree that this transparency and this trust and moving forward, and all of this based on how much we've learned since that last districting process, will serve us in the end, and will, I think, continue in this process of like really building this great council that I think we've got going right now that we can even make better as we go. So I would vote for independent or hybrid, but most likely I think at this point hybrid.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes, I would totally have to agree with what everybody has said. And I also support, I think, more the hybrid, just because I think it gives us, I think what it was, 3 or 4 different options of maps. I think I feel the same way as Councilmember Meyer had just mentioned, was in whatever district I fall in or whatever happens, I'm okay with that as well. Believe me, I'm okay with that. So yeah, I think the hybrid would be great. I think it would give us an opportunity at least to choose 3 or 4 different maps that are created by people outside of the council it was an opportunity to look at a variety of variations of maps. So yeah, I totally agree with everybody.
Thank you. Councilperson Mendoza.
So it sounds like people are feeling really good about the hybrid, even though we haven't voted yet, which is fantastic. So can we talk about if we were to vote on the hybrid and if it were to pass, I think we should have at least like maybe 2 people from each district representing, but then that would be an even number. So then we do 1 at large? Like how can we do that so that it doesn't come out even? Yeah, Damien, I'm glad you're coming on.
I promise I've been here the whole time, just not my face or my voice. That would be a recommendation, is that if you do go with either the hybrid or the independent model, and you decide to take 2 from every district, then you have at least 1 person at large, so then you'd have that odd number in case there's a tie vote on any of the items.
So hopefully we can do the cheaper version. We pick 2 from each hat, and then we put them all together in 1 hat and pick 1. I mean, that would be ideal. If once they're all like vetted, right? Once they're all vetted and they're all good to go.
I think with regard to the selection process, what I'd recommend is that if you go down this road, staff would come back with a report to give you some options on different ways of doing it. I wasn't aware of what Martinez was doing. I'd like to look into that to learn a little bit more about what they're doing, because if that seems to work, then it might be something that would work here. And you're right, it would be a lot less expensive to do that kind of model than using another panel to select it. If it was just completely random and the names just pulled from a hat, that would work well. What any of the commissions would require is certainly outreach to get people to submit their names to be on the commission. That's going to be a real big push for the city, and I would also recommend the council do it as well if you go down this road. The more people we can get, the more candidates we can get, the more likely we'll get qualified ones that are not going to have to be knocked out for one reason or another based on what the law says.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also agree with everything everyone has said. I do prefer. Yes, Councilperson Rodriguez. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
No, don't worry. I could be either or. I'm not worried about that. Yeah, just are we going to select those 2 or 3 people with the current, and I think, obviously we would have to, with the current boundaries in regards to the districting? Because obviously those are going to change. So we're going to use the current. It's just my thing is that, pulling things out of the hat, I don't know where that, I don't know, or out of the box. I really want people that have lived in those areas and have been invested in those areas for, I don't know if it's a certain period of time or how we look at that. Because I think a lot of times we have a lot of great people out there, but I think there's a lot of great people that are not really participating, that really understand their communities and what's best for them. So I'm just wondering how that would look. Yeah.
Having not seen the Martinez model, I don't know how how they're working their model. It sounds as if they are seeking applicants from across the city, and perhaps identify districts as you're proposing, and then staff would likely vet them through the state law requirements. It's very clear what the elections code says. People, what the limitations are, and then make sure that then put them into the four district categories, and then we need to think about what that at large looks like. I suppose the at large random draw would be everyone from the four district categories that didn't get selected through the random draw for that particular district. And so the folks that are still interested, they meet the qualifications, they just weren't the two people picked for that district. That would be through that random method. But again, we'd like to look more about it. If you use the judge model, where you have 3 judges look over the applications and then do interviews, as you would do interviews for a commission, then they would select the candidates after the interview process. So that would be that model. I wouldn't recommend the state redistricting commission model, where you have someone interview qualified candidates, and then you had a random pool of those candidates to select the other candidates. It seems to be a lot of extra steps that you probably don't need to take. But at least those 2 models, and obviously in between now and then, if we learn of any other cities and what they might be doing that's different from those models, we'd bring that to you as well, to give you as many options as possible to make sure that the selection is done independently of you.
Thank you.
And then my concern with that one would be is length of residence. It doesn't seem like length of residence is a criteria. Could that be seen kind of as a discriminatory criteria that we came up with that's not part of the criteria? I don't know. Length of residence, I don't know about that one. That one makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because then I'm saying, you just moved here a couple of years ago, you're not good enough, right? Like that one makes me uncomfortable. I don't know. It should be the most qualified, not who has been here the longest, or, that kind of thing. If we're going to do the interview process and not out of a hat, just a thought.
Councilperson Meyer.
As you probably noticed, I'm lowering and raising my hand based on discussions. I like the criteria that I've been hearing as part of the process already. I think that's really good, strong criteria for us to be following, as far as making sure there's no special interest, influence, anything like that. I also like the making sure that we're representing across the city. I think it's important for us to just remember that anyone that gets put in that pot or hat or box or whatever has been vetted, has gone through this process, and has been determined to be an appropriate candidate for a commission like this. And the criteria that we've talked about is very general and unbiased, and I think that's important for us to keep in mind and to follow that practice. So I'm okay with doing that. In fact, considering it can save us a chunk of change, I think it's a great thing to do.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, I was gonna have a response, but no, I'm okay with it now. I just don't want to get where, unless you have a really good resume or an application, you don't qualify. I think there's a lot of people out there that may not have what we consider qualifications, but they truly have the passion. They do what's right for Brentwood. So for me, I'm just a little concerned about what is that application looking like, and then what makes you qualified. Me personally, I think there's a lot of people in our community that don't participate in council meetings that are just as qualified as anybody else. It'd be nice to look at what that application is going to look like, so that we're not doing it by, how many experiences do you have, but more about, that person's place within that community that they're discussing. Thank you.
Damien, do you have any clarification on what potentially that might look like?
And how I envisioned it would be that the application would be the information, name, what district they live in, things of that sort, and then a checklist to make sure that they meet all of the state requirements. that they haven't run for office in the last 8 years. They haven't made contributions in the last 8 years to a candidate in one of those years, $500. That, not looking, because once you start looking at some of the subjective criteria, it becomes less random. You need to have someone start making some of those selections. And so from what I'm hearing, it seemed to me that it would be more of a, just here are the factual criteria the state sets out. If you meet those, you can put your hat in the ring, and you can move forward. The only thing we'd be adding would be the district residency. So you'd be ensured that you would have 2 people from every district, and then you'd have that at-large individual.
Okay, that's what I had envisioned, and from what I understand, it looks like most of the other council members also. So if there's no more conversation or discussion right now, I would certainly consider a motion on this item.
Make a motion on direction to staff regarding the redistricting process, community outreach, and if one is to be selected, the type of redistricting commission, and that commission would be the hybrid commission.
I second that motion.
If I may just ask for a point of clarification to the maker of motion in the second, that you would like to move forward with a hybrid commission with 2 members from each district and then 1 at-large member using the criteria set forth by the election code for other membership qualifications.
Yes, I'd like to amend my motion to include that verbiage.
And I second her amendment.
We have a first and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
And so, Mr. Mayor, if I may, we'll be coming back at a future meeting as soon as we can with a more formal motion, so you can look hopefully an application. We can make a determination of how these members will be selected and things of that sort. And so we're going to try and get that to you as soon as we can. I'd like to do a little bit more research on what Martinez is doing. And as I said, other cities are going through this process right now. We could have other examples we didn't know about that are occurring that we'll do some research on. And so we may be able to give you some other options for selecting these members. But at a minimum, we at least have the state guidelines we're going to be using. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Robin, as well, for your expertise in this matter. Moving on to item E1, new requests. If you have a new agenda request, please raise your hand and I'll call you in order. Councilperson Rary.
Yes, I just wanted to add a proclamation to recognize the month-long Ramadan, which will be ending the day after. If we bring this to our next council meeting as a proclamation, it will be within their month-long celebration. I apologize. I meant to ask for that at the end of last meeting, but as you all know, I was not able to stay to the end of the meeting. You were on mute, Joel. We don't know what you said.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes, I have a couple of items that I'd like to bring up, and I'm going to try to word this the best that I can. So I know through the American Rescue Funds, we're looking at about $12 million that are coming down the pipe, possibly for the city, right? And I know there's no specific guidelines right now what those monies are actually going to be used for. I know they're around the COVID impact and things like that with cities. But we're looking at, and it's coming, like I said, through the American Resource Fund. It's about $12 million. So I just wanted to put this out there to hopefully have more discussion at the next meeting and hear some stuff, maybe, get some feedback from staff. But one of the recommendations I wanted to do, and I know it's an early recommendation, like I'm saying, but was to look at maybe utilizing $100,000 of that funds to be able to support the Deer Ridge lighting and landscaping district, so that we don't have the residents within the Deer Ridge area have to pay those costs in regards to their engineering report that we're having to do, so that we could cover that through the $12 million. So that was one of the items there that I'm looking at, is maybe for us to look at and considering. Obviously, we need to see where this what's going to be able to be used with these funds, but I'm looking at possibly, and I'm just putting it out there, to support, like I said, the Deer Ridge residents in regards to lighting and landscaping district, $100,000 that they're going to have to reimburse the city for in regards to the engineering report that we're having to do in that area. And then I have a second item that I'd like to bring up as well, is that I know that I would like to also see if we could spend about $100,000 to look at what are some of the lighting and landscaping areas within Brentwood Boulevard that we could identify that could also, we could look at maybe with that another $100,000 and doing an engineering report for that specific area too. So the beauty of this is, and I know that we don't need to go in great detail, is that we're able to impact two different communities within the city of Brentwood when it comes to, the lighting and landscaping districts to, hopefully be able to continue to enhance those areas within our city. So that was another one. Do I stop or do I keep going, or how does that work? I know I already said two, but they're two separate items just so that we have that understanding. Do I just keep going, Tim, or how does that work? Or Mayor? I have one more, that's why.
Just keep going.
Okay, we're on a roll. And then the second third, that I was looking at is to be able to utilize some of these funds to be able to support some of the work that we're looking at doing when it comes to the youth center and the senior center. So I know, obviously, like I said, these are things that are not, we don't even know what these monies are going to be used for, so please know that I understand that. We still need to look at what those requirements are, but I would like to look at possibly, future steps of both of these projects, which is the senior center and youth center, to possibly use some of the funds that are going to be coming in, because I know the money's in regards to COVID. We've seen the impact that it's had with our seniors when it comes to COVID, but also to our youth within our community. So obviously, I'm bringing this a little bit ahead of time, but yeah. So I don't know if I was clear about that or if I have to explain a little bit more. And like I said, I know we don't have to go into great detail today, but I could do that at our next meeting.
I've already got something on the books for Deer Ridge, so.
So, question to staff, do you have clear direction on the future agenda item request from the Vice Mayor?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Councilperson Mendoza.
You're not a speaker.
Sorry. AB 988, which I think you all on the council, a couple of us had sent emails to the chief about it, and I would like us as a city to send a letter to our state representatives that we are in support of AB 988 and that we would like them to move this forward. I'm not sure how everyone else feels about it. There is a family that mental health is an issue in a lot of places, and there's a lot of horrific things that have happened because of mental health and misunderstandings or whatever we want to call it. But the Hall family of Walnut Creek has worked really, really hard. I don't know them. I just have read everything that they've done. And I would like to put it on an agenda item for us to support, but I would also like to support having it named after Miles Hall. So if we could put that on an agenda, that would be great. My understanding, Mayor, is that the league is going to support it. We might not need to put it on an agenda. If you support it, you, the mayor, can support on your own if the league is supporting it. If that comes out this week, I would love for you to be able to send a letter of support to that effect before we even meet, because it is time sensitive. It's moving through. So the sooner we can answer, the better. I think our community would benefit a lot, and all of Contra Costa would benefit from a lot. We are all intertwined, and I think what happened in Walnut Creek affects us all. So thank you.
Just for staff and for Councilperson Mendoza, yes, once the league does send out that letter, I fully intend and will sign it in full support of that action. And so if staff still feels that it's necessary to have a future agenda item, certainly, we can certainly do that. But this is something that is absolutely essential for the well-being of our families and the protection of our police department as well. This helps everyone. And so I'm in 100% support of this idea.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Councilperson Meyer.
That kind of just answered my question. I wasn't sure if this is a little still confusing to me, so bear with me, but I wasn't sure if, I know the mayor can add something to the agenda alone, but if two council members want to add, then they can work together to do that. But it looks like in this case we don't need to do that because we've already got the mayor saying we're behind it. But if the league takes a longer time in getting a letter, where would that leave us? Because I would be happy to be the second person to bring that to the agenda.
Yeah, and I've already counted you two offline, making that same request to me already. So we're planning to put that on the next agenda. But as the mayor alluded to, if the league comes out with a position for it and the mayor agrees with it, we can go ahead and just execute that according to the policies we already have in place. So it'll be a timing issue. If we can get it signed without needing to add it to the agenda, we'll do that. If we need to bring it to the agenda, we'll be prepared for that.
Thank you. And thank you. If there are no more future agenda item requests, then we will move into item E2-1, and Councilperson Rary and we didn't have the benefit of her being able to have her separate ones, so Councilmember Mendoza kindly helped us join it together because this is something that's important to all. I'm sorry, Councilmember Meyer did. So I will give my request, and then Councilmember Rary can give her request as part of this E2-1. And my request was simply regarding the possible direction to staff to report on the history of the Nail property. This is a piece of property that the city owns that is outside of the city limits. It's directly across from Sellers Avenue, and it's contiguous with the East Contra Costa Historical Society. The city, for many years, has had a plan regarding this piece of property. There are maps included with that, and this is simply my request to the city and to council is have the city bring all of the information that we have regarding the plans, the past plans, and the Nail property, and present it to council so that we know what it's about, what it's there, and also during that same time have the East Contra Costa Historical Society speak to their desire for involvement with the city in potential partnership with something like that. That's my request to council, and I'll turn it to Councilperson Rare.
And mine's along the same lines. I believe the Nail property was purchased in 2007. In 2004, the city signed a memorandum of understanding between the California Department of Parks and Recreation and the city of Brentwood for the maintenance of for the development, restoration, and maintenance of the John Marsh House, which are under the jurisdiction of the Department of California Parks and Rec, and located partially in the city of Brentwood. Cooperation is in the interest of both parties because it would enable both parties to fulfill their common missions and goals, including the restoration and development of a valuable cultural, historical, natural, and recreational resource that will benefit the state as a whole, the state park system, as well as the local community. And I mean, even in this memorandum of understanding, the city has offered to provide 2 staff people to be at this park. in addition to the development, restoration, and conservation. And I do know that they are trying to get the park opened with the interpretive center. While it'd be great to get these things to come back to us, I do think that we do have a strategic plan in place at this time. I think that we should move that forward, these items forward, to be considered during the next strategic plan, so that we can determine whether or not these are items that we want to fund. I know that originally the funding to purchase the Nail property came from the ag enterprise funding that the mitigation fees that we get, which could be the same thing to be used for the interpretive center at the state park, as these will increase agritourism in our area. Somebody goes out and they spend their day picking fruit, and then they can drive over to the Historical Society or over to the John Marsh House and have a picnic lunch with their family and view the interpretive center panels that would be up at both locations. But I think this is something that both of them are pretty costly, and it's something that maybe we should look to our strategic plan to include as a possibility for funding at that point.
Okay, thank you. Margaret?
I received 0 public comments on this prior to the meeting. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call upon your name if provided, and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I have one hand raised right now. Carolina Villaseca, go ahead.
Oh, good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to, once again, piggyback off what Karen said. Both my kids and I, because I chaperone, took tours of both properties with their schools, and the field trips were amazing because the kids saw things and they learned things that there's no way to teach in a classroom. You know, when you go to the nail house and you get to see the old school, I think that's the one. We also went to, so the kids got to sit, and they actually had a short little math class where they had to write on chalkboards and show the teacher. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. And then we also toured the John Marsh house, and that one was even more special because the special ed kids got to go. And so I kind of hung out with them, and, you know, they had some really interesting, they see things differently, and the interaction that the kids were able to have, like the gen ed kids with the special ed kids in that setting, was fantastic. So I'm a big proponent of all of these different properties that teach history, like live, I guess is the best way to say it. Like you get to touch and feel and look and understand. And, you know, like I have a picture of my son using a washboard washing clothes, right? So now he really appreciates a washing machine. So, you know, it's educational. It expands the minds. It's historical. You get to learn how people lived back in the day in Brentwood. And I strongly support continuing to support these properties. Thank you.
I see no additional hands raised at this time.
Thank you. So at this time, we will close public comment, and we will move into board discussion. If you have further discussion, if you just like raise your hand, I'll call you in order. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
So what are we asking to do, Mayor, and or what are we? I guess what is the request? I mean, I understand that to support, right, both of these projects, I guess, and they're two separate projects, right? So you're asking for one thing, right, Mayor, and then in regards to the Historical Society, and then Sharon's asking, Councilmember Rary's asking for the John Marsh, right? are these two separate? Or are they together? Or how do we, you know what I mean? I guess.
Well, to answer my part of it, I am absolutely in favor, and the city has given significant financial support to the John Marsh House over the years. Had that not happened, it's potential that it could have fallen in on itself. I'm in absolute support of it. It's a fantastic resource for education. One of the things that really has always bothered me a whole lot, because it's personal with my upbringing, is this. It really bothers me that true history is glossed over a lot of times, and when you have things like the John Marsh House, that it doesn't have a warm, fuzzy history entirely, but what it was is the end result, very much so, of what was called Manifest Destiny, or Go West, Young Man. We have something that is, there's nothing else like it in the world. We are the culmination, and right here in Brentwood is the culmination of westward progress, and we have a house here that was very much a part of that history. But in addition to that, I would like, without necessarily spending any current funds or making any changes to our strategic plan, as far as the Historical Society and the Nail property, I would like for staff to bring back the history of it, so we can educate our community and our current council on what has happened, where we are with it, and the potential of where it could go in a
Well, I guess I asked that because the Historical Society, the Brentwood Historical Society, would talk about the history of Brentwood, and hopefully, that encompasses a lot of different things, right? I'll be honest, it's a little bit harder to support the John Marsh for me personally, just because my understanding, I would like to know more about this gentleman, because the area that I come from and the people that I talked to, he wasn't a very nice man when it came to the Native Americans within these communities, right? And he did a lot of things to a lot of the natives in this area. So my thing is, before supporting something like that or doing anything like that, I would like to learn more, because I really have heard some interesting stories, and it's just very difficult for me to want to support something like that if we're not being transparent with the story, right? I think you mentioned it right now, Mayor, is that, we've all done our things, right? But let's be honest about it, right? Let's talk about it. But at the same time, let's also represent those people that were there before all of us were there, right? So, and I don't know if that's happening currently, right? I don't know. So because I know that, I'll be honest with you, I've gone there before and participated in events, and then I go back home and they ask me where I'm at, where I was at, and then I get yelled at because, why would you go there? Did you know who this gentleman was and what he did? And of course, I'm uneducated about it. I didn't. So I just like to learn more. But I also know that in regards to the Historical Society, I think it's a great opportunity, right? It's really focused on Brentwood and the history of Brentwood. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Thank you. Councilperson Mendoza.
I'm new to this, so I'm starting to get a little concerned with all of these projects. We got the senior center, we got the youth center, we got the Nail property, we got the John Marsh House, and this is what I've seen from the outside for years. New city councils come, they roll the dice on new projects, and then all the old stuff gets forgotten. And like Councilwoman Murray said, I think everything should be part of our strategic plan. Does it fit in with the strategic plan that we want, that the vision for the city is? Because right now what's happening is we're like Band-Aiding a bunch of stuff, and nothing is cohesive. So how do all of these, and I'm not saying these projects are bad, I'm saying it feels like it's a free-for-all. And the overall strategy of Brentwood is like out the window, and there isn't, so I think I support what Councilwoman Murray said, everything. All of these projects need to figure out how they fit into the strategic plan. What do residents think about them? Is it what they want? Like I know with the youth center, they're going to come back with the 3 options. We're going to get, feedback from residents. Do they want to hold out for the one on Sand Creek? Do they want the youth center? Do they want the one Village Drive? It's got to be, what was our vision? Are we still fulfilling the vision? Not people's projects now because they're new on council, and not spending money because they're new or, you know, they weren't here when the original vision was. So that's number one. Number two, I understand where Vice Mayor Johnny Rodriguez is coming from. All of our kids do mission projects. I had to do a mission project. Let me tell you, none of the missionaries were good to any of the indigenous people, but we had to do it because we had to learn our history. So and a lot of religions came in and converted our ancestors from indigenous religions to Christianity, which, I mean, that wasn't a nice thing either. So while it still is negative, I think we do need to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and it would be a good way to educate. And I only go back to it because I grew up in Oakland. We have the Dunsmuir House and Gardens. The family that originated the Dunsmuir House and Gardens was not the best family ever, but it really has done something for Oakland, and it, you know, it does generate revenue. It gives history. So I think let's not cut off our nose to spite our face. Let's, again, look at every single project that we're talking about as a whole vision of how does it fit into the overall strategy of Brentwood and move forward. And I think we should do that with everything. I think these one-offs are not good. I don't know when the date is, Tim, of the next strategic plan review. Do you know when that is? I don't know when it is.
You're making some great points, and the date of that is slated for this fall, October-ish. One of the things that I've observed now being new to the city as well is it seems to be off cycle from when we have elections. And so we have new coming council members come in, inheriting somebody else's strategic plan for the last 2 years, for the next 2 years. So at some point, we need to strategize internally and figure out how we can realign that so that the new council comes in, we do a strategic plan with the new council. That's good for the 2-year cycle, and that also then aligns with the 2-year budget so that everything is all lined up and strategically focused. That's the best practice, right?
Yeah.
There have been quite a few requests tonight, and they're all important, but staff is going to have to try to prioritize them and get back to you as soon as we can in a reasonable time frame without delaying other priorities as you direct them, of course.
Yeah. Is there any way we can move all of these to when we review the strategic plan? I mean, because they're all, I mean, like Councilwoman Rary said, these are all this is a lot of money. Even like, the money for the youth center that Vice Mayor Rodriguez brought up, like these 3 projects or 4 projects total are a lot of money. And I don't want to vote on them in a silo. Like I want to vote on them understanding the ramifications on the entire strategic plan. And if I vote for something to move forward, what gets pushed back, and are the constituents okay with that? Because if you're spending money on something new, that means something's got to give. So can that be the agenda item? I don't know.
In part, we're going to talk about the strategic plan on May 25th, or whatever that second meeting in May is, because that's part of the budget workshop discussion to say, hey, we have this strategic plan. Here are some initiatives. These are the ones that are all unfunded. Do you want to restore these? And so we'll sort of talk about the strategic plan, but that may be, maybe we need to discuss the strategic plan sooner than this October, November.
Well, I feel like I need to clarify my request. My request isn't to bring funding. My request is to put this in line for consideration at the strategic plan. This was just simply an item that the city has dealt with off and on for a long time, and it's an item that I think would be very beneficial to the whole community. But my request is simply to get this item in line for the strategic plan conversation, and not requesting special funding or moving it outside of that process.
Yeah, and if I understand it correctly, what staff can do is we can come back and prepare a report for the council detailing the history of how we acquired it, how its land use is zoned. It's not in the city limits, but we own it. Some of the details that can give you some additional options about what you would like to do with it going forward, and how we can assist, bring more exposure and tourism and economic development, all those things that the Historical Society can play a role in. And then on the John Marsh House, a similar scope, bring back the history and It sounds like we funded it in the past. You know, what are their asks going forward, and how can we better bring some exposure and use that as an asset of our community, or not, if there's some issues with it as well. So we can bring both those back if that's the request, if I've understood it correctly. But separate items. In hindsight now, we would have had these as separate asks on the agenda, so it was really clear they're not related. There's a similar concept to both. Both have some historical significance, and both aren't being fully focused on by the city in some sense. So, but probably separate requests going forward.
Well, and if I could get assistance from Damien with this, if staff has clear direction with this, and I was never intending to ask for any kind of financial input in this right now. If it's possible, I'm happy to withdraw my request, or we can vote. I'm needing some direction right now, Damien, if you'd like.
Well, as I understand the request, it was to get more information, provide council with more information on the John Marsh house, or on the Nail property and the John Marsh house as well. That will take staff time and resources to do, and that's the purpose of this agenda item, is to determine if you want to spend staff time and resources to get that information for you. So I would say you do need a vote for that, but all you're voting on, as I understand it, is just having staff come back with an informational report. It's not coming back with asking for money or anything of that sort. It's just, this is the history, because we do have new members of the council that were not here back when the city purchased the Nail property. They weren't here when all the John Marsh activities occurred early on, when the city was helping that project out. So I think it's just an informational report, but it will take staff time and resources, which would require a vote. And I think you could make it into one motion if you'd like, or if you want to do it separately, you can do that as well.
Okay.
And I'll just add that additional information before the whole council might inform you to say, hey, this would be a great strategic plan initiative this fall, or if we don't really think there's much to do with it, come back with an action item that's not significant resource intense. So a couple options once you have more information.
Okay. Well, if there's no further conversation on this, then I will entertain a motion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we come back with more information on the property. What is it? Nails? Is that what it is? Nails? The Nails property, and then also the John Marsh house. If we come back with more information, so that we could be able to, as a council, have the information to hopefully later on possibly bring it to their strategic plan, if that's something we plan to do with the information that we're given.
Okay, we have
I don't know if I said that correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a first and a second. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
And also to staff, understand there's no, don't bump this in line for other important things. Just wanted to have this available when appropriate. And I do want to acknowledge all of our residents that are celebrating Ramadan. Thank you, Councilmember Rary, for the request that you put in. I have had some meetings with some of the residents this last week that are celebrating Ramadan, and I just want to wish them a Ramadan Kareem. And I need a motion for adjournment. Oh, yes. Councilperson Mendoza.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It's not anything on the agenda, but this is kind of a big deal. There's a 13-year-old missing from Brentwood. She's the Brentwood Police Department's looking for her. They have it on their website. You can see her picture. If you have kids, ask your kids, because usually kids know what's going on. So just if anyone knows, keep an eye out for her.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So with that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We have a first.
Second.
I second that.
First and a second, roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
We are adjourned. Councilperson Rary, please take care of yourself and get well soon. Good to see you. And everyone be safe. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Goodbye.